Tonight, we drift beside the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake, where pale turquoise water rests inside a volcanic bowl under a cool mountain sky. Settle in and let the journey move slowly. The air feels damp against your skin, carrying the faint mineral smell of rain-wet stone, sulfur, and quiet steam. You are not hurrying toward the lake. We arrive as if in a dream, along the dark rim of Kawah Ijen in eastern Java, where the mountain opens into a basin of cloud and color. Below us, the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake holds its strange glow without needing sunlight. It looks almost tender from above, a soft blue-green oval cupped by steep walls of ash, lava, and altered rock. You can imagine the first breath here becoming slower because everything seems held in place by the crater's silence. Even the wind feels careful as it passes over the rim. The lake's color is the first thing you notice because it seems too bright for such an old, quiet place. It's not the easy blue of a tropical lagoon, and it's not the deep blue of open sea. This blue has a mineral stillness to it, a milky brightness, as though the mountain has dissolved a fragment of sky and kept it hidden inside the crater. You stand with us in the cool air, looking down through drifting mist, and the water seems to glow from within. It's a peaceful strangeness, not loud, not theatrical, just quietly impossible. The Ijen Crater Lake is strange because it gathers fire, water, stone, and chemistry into one calm surface. Beneath that surface, volcanic gases rise through cracks and hot pathways, carrying sulfur, chlorine, and other elements from the mountain's deeper heat. When those gases meet water, they change it slowly and completely. You don't need to picture violence here. Think instead of breath entering water, of minerals folding into rain, of the mountain whispering through its own hidden pipes. Over time, those whispers make the lake intensely acidic, among the most acidic large lakes on Earth. As we remain near the rim, the world feels divided into layers. Above us, night air moves softly through high leaves and thin cloud. Around us, the crater walls hold the smell of warm minerals and damp earth. Below us, the lake lies still, blue and opaque, with little threads of vapor wandering over it. You can feel the temperature shifting as the breeze comes up from the basin, cool at first, then faintly warmed by steam. The mountain is awake in a very old, quiet way, and we are only listening. The crater itself is part of a larger volcanic landscape, a place shaped by eruptions, collapses, rain, and time. Kawah Ijen belongs to the Ijen volcanic complex, where old cones and caldera walls rise across eastern Java like folded shadows. You can imagine the whole region breathing over thousands of years, building slopes from ash and lava, then softening them under rain and forest. The lake sits inside one of those openings, not as an ornament, but as the result of long conversation between water and rock. Every shoreline curve has been shaped by heat, weather, and patience. When you look at the crater walls, the colors are gentle but unusual. Pale yellow sulfur stains the rock near steaming vents. Rusty orange marks appear where iron has changed in the air. Some slopes are gray, some white, some washed into soft green where moisture has touched them again and again. You can let your eyes move slowly across those colors, the way a hand might pass over worn fabric. Nothing here needs to announce itself. The mountain explains itself in quiet layers, and as we begin to descend in thought from the rim toward the lake, the air becomes more enclosed, and the strangeness of Ijen feels closer. The path down into the crater would feel rough underfoot, made of volcanic fragments, pale dust, and stone polished by mist. We do not rush it. You move with the rhythm of slow breathing, letting each step belong to the slope. The smell of sulfur becomes more noticeable, not sharp in this telling, but mineral and ancient, like matches after rain or hot stone cooling in darkness. Above, the rim grows higher. Below, the blue acid lake waits with a stillness that makes sound seem smaller. Here, the lake's color becomes less like a view and more like a presence. It spreads across the crater floor in a soft turquoise sheet, clouded by dissolved minerals and fine particles. You may notice that the water does not invite reflection in the usual way. It absorbs the sky into its own chemistry, changing light as it arrives. This is part of why the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake feels so strange. It resembles a jewel, but it is also a solution, a vast natural basin of altered volcanic water. The acidity comes from the mountain's breath. Sulfur dioxide and other volcanic gases move upward from hot zones below, then dissolve into the lake and form acids. Rainfall gathers in the crater, but it does not remain simple rain for long. It receives these gases, washes over altered rocks, and collects ions from the slopes. You can imagine each drop arriving clear from a cloud, then becoming part of something older and more complex. The lake is not separate from the volcano. It is the volcano's quiet liquid surface. The strange blue is partly a trick of light, partly a sign of chemistry, and partly the way suspended minerals scatter brightness through the water. In ordinary lakes, you might see brown sediment, green algae, or dark reflected forest. Here, strong acidity limits the familiar life of freshwater ponds, and the dissolved mineral load changes what your eye receives. The lake becomes bright in a way that feels unearthly. You look at it and your mind says water, while your senses say mineral, vapor, mountain, dream. There is comfort in letting that contradiction remain. We do not have to make the lake ordinary. Some places on Earth are peaceful because they resist our easy categories, and Ijen is one of them. You can sit beside the idea of it, feeling cool mist touch your face, hearing small stones shift somewhere on the slope, watching vapor drift above the opaque blue. The lake is strange, but it is not restless. It has been collecting the mountain's chemistry for a long time. Near the edges, where the water meets the crater wall, the shoreline can seem almost delicate. Pale crusts and damp mineral stains mark the margins. Steam may curl from vents and fumaroles, rising in slow white threads. You can picture those threads moving without hurry, bending when the wind asks them to bend. The sound is subdued, more like a breath through cloth than a roar. Even the active parts of Ijen have a hush to them when we listen gently. Below this first closeness, the lake asks us to think not only about color, but about the hidden heat beneath it. Under Kawah Ijen, the earth remains warm with volcanic energy, though the surface may feel cool under night air. Heat moves through fractures and porous rock, carrying gases and fluids upward. These pathways are not always visible, but the lake reveals them through steam, acidity, and dissolved minerals. You can imagine a deep, slow circulation, with water sinking into warm stone, changing, rising again, and joining the crater basin. The whole place is a quiet system of exchange. Hydrothermal systems are often described with technical language, but they can also be felt as a kind of underground breathing. Water enters the mountain through rain and seepage. It warms, reacts with rock, gathers elements, and returns. At Ijen, that returning water and gas help maintain the lake's unusual chemistry. You are listening now to a landscape that does not separate weather from geology. Rain belongs to the volcano, steam belongs to the sky. Stone becomes part of water. This is one reason the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake is so strange. It is not merely a lake sitting in a crater. It is an active meeting place, where the atmosphere, the volcanic interior, and the surface world keep touching. You can look at the calm blue water and know that invisible reactions are continuing beneath it. Slow and steady, acids form, minerals dissolve, and heat moves upward through hidden openings. Yet from a distance, the surface may appear almost motionless, as if nothing is happening at all. That contrast is soothing when we let it be. Many places seem busy on the surface and quiet underneath. Ijen is the reverse. It holds deep activity beneath a calm face. You may feel that in yourself as you listen, the way thoughts can move below while the body rests. The lake becomes a mirror of inwardness, not by reflecting your shape, but by reminding you that stillness can contain many processes. Quiet does not mean empty. The surrounding rock has been altered by this same chemistry. Acidic fluids can bleach minerals, soften colors, and leave pale zones along vents and channels. Iron may oxidize into warm reds and oranges. Sulfur gathers in yellow deposits near fumaroles, sometimes vivid against the gray ground. You can picture the crater wall like an old map painted by heat and rain, each color showing where the mountain has exhaled. There is no need to hurry across it. the details arrive slowly. As we linger, the senses become more inward. The air is cool on your cheeks, but the ground may hold a faint warmth in places. The smell is mineral and damp. The light is dim, turning the lake from bright turquoise to deeper blue as cloud passes over the basin. You hear the soft hiss of vapor, a distant crumble of rock, perhaps the muted sound of your own breathing. Ijen surrounds you with textures rather than events, and as the hidden heat rises through the mountain, our attention drifts towards the blue fire that sometimes appears along the crater's dark vents. At night, Ijen is known for a strange blue flame, though the flame is not the lake itself burning. It comes from sulfur-rich gases emerging hot from cracks, sometimes igniting as they meet oxygen. In darkness, that flame can appear blue, low, and fluid, moving along the ground like a secret held close to the stone. You can imagine it gently, without alarm, as a quiet light born from chemistry. It flickers in the crater's shadow, while the lake nearby keeps its muted blue silence. This blue fire adds another layer to the strangeness of the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake. By day, the lake is the impossible color. By night, the vents may hold the blue. The mountain seems to shift its glow from water to flame, from surface to fissure, from calm basin to breathing rock. We watch from a respectful distance in this slow journey, letting the image remain soft. A dark crater, a pale lake, and small blue flames where sulfur gases meet the air. Sulfur itself is a quiet but powerful character here. It rises from the volcanic system in gas, condenses near cooler surfaces, and forms yellow deposits around vents. The color can be startling, almost golden against ash-gray stone. You may picture it as the mountain's mineral frost, left behind where hot breath cools. In the stillness, those sulfur deposits seem like traces of a conversation between depth and air. The earth speaks upward, and the surface keeps the residue. The science is simple enough to hold gently. Sulfur compounds rise from heated zones beneath the crater. Some dissolve into the lake, helping build acidity. Some escape through fumaroles. When certain gases burn, their flame appears blue because of the way sulfur combustion emits light. There is no need to make it dramatic. It is the visible edge of a chemical process, a small glow where hidden heat becomes briefly luminous. You can let that idea settle into your breathing. A process can be strange and still be calm. A flame can be blue and still belong to silence. The crater does not perform for us. It simply continues, as it has continued through nights of mist, rain, cloud, and moonless darkness. We are only passing through in thought, observing with a quiet mind. Ijen remains itself, whether anyone sees the flame or not. Around the vents, the landscape would feel close and textured. The ground might be pale with mineral crust, damp in hollows, warm near openings, and cool again where night air gathers. Vapor passes over stone in slow folds. The blue flame, when present, does not fill the crater with light. It makes the darkness feel larger, because a small glow always reveals the vastness around it. You notice the lake beyond, dim and still, holding another kind of blue. And below the blue flame, beneath the visible breath of sulfur, the crater lake continues its patient work of dissolving and receiving. The acidity of Ijen's lake is part of what makes it so unusual among natural waters. Many lakes are shaped mostly by rivers, glaciers, rainfall, or groundwater. This one is shaped intimately by volcanic gases and hydrothermal fluids. Its water can be extremely acidic, more like a vast natural acid bath than a familiar mountain lake. Yet in our slow telling, that fact does not need to feel harsh. It can simply feel precise, like knowing the name of a star. Acidic water changes the way rock and mineral matter behave. It can dissolve metals from the crater walls and carry them in solution. It can alter sediments at the bottom. It can transform the chemistry of outflowing streams, where lake water leaves the crater and moves into lower valleys. You can imagine the lake as a quiet collector, receiving rain, gas, ash, and dissolved stone. Over time, it becomes an archive of the volcano's inner life. When we think about why the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake is so strange, this collecting matters. The lake is not only beautiful, it is information made visible. Its color, Acidity, temperature, and mineral content all tell geologists something about what is happening beneath the crater. A change in chemistry may suggest a change in gas flow. A change in temperature may hint at shifting hydrothermal activity. The lake is calm to the eye, but to those who study it, it is also a page being written slowly. You can feel the gentleness in that kind of attention. To study Ijen well is not to conquer it, but to listen to its chemistry with patience. Samples of water, observations of gas, measurements of temperature, and careful watching all become forms of respect. We learn by returning, by comparing, by noticing small changes over time. The mountain does not speak quickly, it asks for repetition. The crater walls around the lake also tell of time. They were formed by volcanic materials, altered by acidic vapor, weathered by rain, and softened by gravity. Rockfalls and erosion slowly reshape the basin. Mist settles, water seeps, fine particles drift into the lake. You can picture the walls as both solid and temporary, strong in the moment, yet always being changed. Even stone is a kind of slow movement. There is a deep comfort in that thought. You do not have to be still forever to rest. You only have to move slowly enough that the mind can soften around the motion. Ijen changes, but it changes in geological breaths. The lake receives, dissolves, cools, warms, and waits. You can rest beside that pace. It is much older than worry, and as we follow the chemistry outward, the strange lake begins to connect with rain, slopes, valleys, and the quieter ecosystems beyond the crater. Rainfall is one of the softest forces at Ijen, and one of the most important. Clouds gather over the high volcanic landscape, releasing water onto forest, ash, rock, and crater rim. Some of that rain runs down toward the lake, where it joins the acidic basin. Some sinks through porous ground and enters hydrothermal pathways. You can imagine each drop beginning as mist, touching leaves, slipping over stone, and eventually becoming part of the volcano's chemistry. Rain makes the system continuous. The contrast between the crater interior and the surrounding highland can feel dreamlike. Outside the altered basin, vegetation may return in green layers, softened by cloud and mountain moisture. Ferns, shrubs, and trees hold beads of water on their leaves. The air smells of wet earth, plant matter, and distant minerals. You can feel the boundary as we move in thought between the living green slopes and the blue acid crater lake of Ijen, where the water belongs to a different kind of world. This is part of the landscape's quiet wonder. Ijen is not only one lake or one flame, it is a meeting of ecosystems and geologic processes, where lush volcanic highlands surround a crater shaped by acidity and heat. Life gathers where conditions allow it, and withdraws where chemistry becomes too intense. There is no conflict in this, only placement. Each form of life finds the edge it can inhabit, and the mountain holds all those edges together. In the surrounding areas, plants help catch mist and stabilize soil. Mosses and small growths may soften damp stones. Insects move through leaves. Birds pass through the higher forest in the cooler parts of the day. You can listen for them from far away, not as a bright chorus, but as faint notes carried across mist. Near the crater, the sounds thin again. The lake draws attention inward, and the world becomes quiet. The water's acidity limits ordinary freshwater life, so the lake does not behave like a gentle pond filled with fish and reeds. Its life, where present, is microbial, chemical, and subtle, belonging to organisms adapted to extreme conditions or to margins where waters mix. You can think of this without loneliness. The absence of familiar life makes room for another kind of presence. The lake's strangeness is not emptiness, it is specialization. Microbial life in acidic volcanic settings can be extraordinarily patient. Some organisms use chemical energy rather than sunlight in ways that remind us life is more flexible than our everyday senses suggest. We do not need to overstate what lives in the lake itself. It is enough to know that extreme environments teach science to widen its imagination. You look at the blue water, and the world becomes larger. Life may be quiet, small, and hidden, yet still deeply real. And as the rain keeps falling through cloud and forest, the story of Ijen moves from the crater's edge toward the way water carries the mountain beyond itself. The lake is held inside the crater, but it is not entirely sealed away. Water can leave the basin through drainage and seepage, carrying acidity and dissolved minerals into streams below. As it travels, it mixes with other waters, changes chemistry, and becomes part of a wider watershed. You can imagine a thin thread leaving the blue crater, moving down through rock and valley, gradually losing the intense character of its source. Even strange water has a path. This outward movement makes the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake more than a visual wonder. It becomes a source within a living landscape, influencing water chemistry beyond the crater walls. Scientists pay close attention to such systems because acidic volcanic lakes can affect rivers, soils, and ecosystems downstream. In our slow descent of thought, this knowledge does not disturb the calm. It simply reminds us that no landscape ends at the place where our eyes stop looking. Water is always carrying memory. Rain remembers cloud, streams remember slope. The crater lake remembers gas, sulfur, heat, ash, and stone. As it moves outward, it brings some of that memory with it. You can picture the chemistry softening as waters mix, like a strong color diluted in a clear bowl. The mountain's influence remains, but it becomes quieter with distance. This, too, is a kind of rest. The idea of mixing is peaceful. Nothing stays entirely separate in a landscape. Air enters water, water enters rock, rock enters soil, soil feeds roots, mist returns to cloud. We stand beside Ijen and begin to feel how every part of the place belongs to a cycle, even the parts that seem unusual. The lake is strange because its cycle is concentrated and visible. It shows us processes that elsewhere remain hidden in small amounts. You may notice in this imagined stillness how the senses change as we think beyond the crater. The sulfur scent fades a little. The air becomes greener. The hush opens into the softer sounds of leaves, distant water, and wind crossing slopes. Yet the blue lake remains behind us in memory, still cupped in its volcanic basin. We carry its color gently, the way closed eyes can hold light after looking at a bright sky. There is comfort in knowing that even a place as unusual as Ijen belongs to Earth's slow patterns. It is not outside nature, it is nature showing one of its quieter extremes. Acid, sulfur, heat, rain, and rock are all ordinary in themselves. At Ijen, they gather in a rare arrangement. The strangeness comes from concentration, patience, and place. And as evening deepens over the crater, we return our attention to the lake's surface, where color and silence settle together. At dusk, the Ijen crater lake would begin to change without moving much at all. The bright turquoise softens into deeper blue, the crater walls lose their sharp edges. Vapor becomes more visible as pale ribbons against dim stone. You can imagine standing there with us while the air cools, feeling the mountain exhale through small openings, listening as daytime detail sinks into shadow. The lake remains the center, quiet and strange. Light is one of the gentlest ways to understand this place. In full sun, the lake may appear almost brilliant, its color startling against gray and yellow rock. Under cloud, it becomes milkier, more secretive. At twilight, it darkens and seems deeper than it may appear by day. You watch the same water become several different waters, not because it changes suddenly, but because the sky changes above it. The lake receives light and alters it. This changing color can make Ijen feel less like a fixed object and more like a breathing atmosphere. The lake's chemistry gives it the base of its strangeness, but light completes the experience. Minerals scatter and absorb. Clouds soften reflection, mist veils the shore. Your eye blends all of it into one impression, and that impression is blue, acidic, volcanic, and calm. The strangeness is sensory before it becomes scientific. We can rest inside that order. First you see the color, then you smell the minerals, then you feel the cool air and the dampness on your skin. Then, slowly, you learn why the water is this way. The science does not remove the wonder, it deepens it. Understanding Ijen is like watching the lake become clearer while remaining mysterious. The crater at night belongs to quieter sounds. A faint hiss of steam, a soft movement of wind, a distant shift of gravel. Perhaps the small drip of condensation from rock. These sounds do not rise into drama. They make a low, natural room around the lake. You can let each one pass through the mind and fade. The mountain is not asking you to solve it tonight. As darkness gathers, the blue fire may appear again near the vents, and the lake may hold only a dim echo of color. Water and flame share the crater without becoming the same thing. One is a broad acidic basin shaped by rain and dissolved gas. The other is a brief combustion of sulfur-rich vapor, yet to the eye both seem to belong to the same hidden blue language. Ijen speaks in that color, softly, from different depths, and as night settles more fully into the crater, the strangeness of the lake becomes less like a question and more like a place to rest. In the deeper part of the night, the Ijen blue acid crater lake feels less like a feature on a map and more like a quiet thought held by the mountain. You can imagine the surface darkening until its turquoise becomes only a memory beneath the mist. The crater walls gather shadow in their folds, while pale vapor moves slowly above the vents. We stay with that stillness, letting the unusual chemistry become part of the atmosphere rather than something to solve. The lake is strange, and yet it rests. If you could lower your attention beneath the surface, not your body, only your imagining, you would find water unlike most water you have known. The Ijen Lake is filled with dissolved substances carried upward by volcanic breath and washed downward by rain. Acidity changes the feel of the place in ways the eye cannot fully measure. It changes what can live there, what minerals remain dissolved, and how the lake responds to new water entering from the slopes. We picture it slowly as a whole basin holding invisible detail beneath blue quiet. The surface may appear smooth from above, but the lake is always receiving. It receives rain from cloud banks that cross the highlands. It receives seepage from altered rock. It receives gases from the heated interior of Kawah Ijen, where sulfur and chlorine compounds rise through fractures. You can think of every input as a soft thread entering the same woven cloth. Some threads arrive cool and clear, some arrive hot, acidic, and mineral-rich. Together, they make the lake's identity. This is why the blue color can feel almost dreamlike. It is not a simple paint laid over the water. It comes from light moving through a mineral-charged body, from suspended particles, dissolved compounds, and the way the crater's pale walls and sky interact with the surface. You may see turquoise in one moment, milky green in another, deeper blue as cloud thickens. The lake is not changing moods in a human way. It is only letting light reveal different layers of its chemistry. The strangeness of Ijen is also a matter of balance. Rain tries to dilute the lake, while volcanic gases continue to renew its acidity. Minerals dissolve, sediments settle, and water leaves by drainage or seepage. You can imagine the basin as a slow bowl of exchange, always being altered, but never hurried out of itself. In many lakes, freshwater organisms and plants become the obvious story. Here, chemistry takes the foreground. The lake's quiet character is shaped less by reeds and fish than by reaction. And as we drift deeper into this idea, the lake becomes a place where ordinary water has learned the language of the volcano. Water is patient enough to become almost anything. In a cloud, it is vapor and softness. On a leaf, it is a bead trembling in cool air. Inside the Ijen crater, it becomes acidic, mineral-rich, and luminous with an unusual blue. You can follow that transformation gently, without needing to rush through its causes. Rain falls into a volcanic bowl. Gases rise into that rain. Rock gives up ions and colors. The water keeps all of it, like a quiet room keeping the scent of incense. The crater lake's acidity is one of its defining qualities, and it gives the water a character far from ordinary mountain lakes. Some measurements have found the lake to be extremely acidic, with a pH near 0 in certain conditions. We do not need to dwell on the number. It is enough to feel the contrast between the lake's soft color and its powerful chemistry. You look down and see blue calm, while knowing that the water is actively dissolving parts of the mountain around it. That pairing feels unearthly. Yet even this dissolving is part of a slow natural order. Acidic water moves against rock, and minerals respond. Some elements enter the water and travel with it. Others remain behind as altered crusts, stains, or clays. Over long periods, the crater becomes both container and participant. It holds the lake, and the lake changes the container. You can feel the tenderness of that exchange, if tenderness means patience rather than softness. Stone and water are working on each other without haste. The walls of Kawah Ijen carry these marks in subdued colors. Pale areas suggest alteration by acidic vapor. Yellow deposits show where sulfur has condensed from volcanic gas. Red and orange stains appear where iron has met oxygen and water. Gray slopes speak of ash, lava, and weathered volcanic material. You can let your gaze move across them slowly, from one shade to the next, as though reading a page written in minerals. The crater does not hide its history. It simply writes slowly. Around the fumaroles, the air has a different texture. It may feel warmer and more mineral-laden, with steam passing in thin curtains that blur the stones behind them. The smell of sulfur can seem to arrive in waves, depending on wind and moisture. You notice how the senses overlap here. The eye sees yellow. The nose finds sulfur. The skin feels damp heat and cool night air alternating. The ear hears a low hiss, steady enough to become almost soothing. Below this mineral breath, the lake remains the still center, receiving what the mountain offers and turning it into color. In daylight, the Ijen blue acid crater lake can seem brighter than the surrounding world. The crater walls are muted, the rocks rough and pale, but the water holds a luminous blue-green that appears almost polished. You can imagine standing above it in morning mist, while the sun reaches the basin unevenly. Some parts of the water brighten, others remain under shadow. The color gathers in patches and gradients, and your eye follows it without effort, the way it follows moonlight on a quiet floor. The brightness is part of why the lake feels strange, rather than merely unusual. We expect acidity to look severe, but Ijen's lake can look serene, almost gentle from a distance. The mind receives two messages at once. This is a harsh chemical environment for ordinary freshwater life, and yet it is visually soft, cool, and radiant. You do not have to choose between those truths. The place is both, and the calm comes from allowing both to remain. Light on water is always a collaboration. At Ijen, the collaboration includes volcanic minerals, suspended particles, dissolved substances, cloud, angle, depth, and the pale crater slopes. When the sky is bright, the lake may appear almost tropical in color, though its chemistry belongs to a very different world. When fog passes, the same water turns subdued, like blue glass seen through cloth. You can breathe with that change. The lake is teaching attention to slow down. Because the lake sits inside a high volcanic crater, its atmosphere is often shaped by mist and cloud. Moist air cools as it rises over the landscape, and vapor gathers along the rim. You may picture white clouds slipping into the basin and touching the water without sound. It softens distance and removes sharp edges. The blue lake appears, disappears, and appears again. This rhythm suits sleep because it does not demand certainty. It lets things become gently unclear. The surrounding highlands add another layer of quiet. Beyond the crater, forests and plantations lie in the damp mountain air, their greens softened by rainfall and altitude. Inside the crater, the colors shift towards mineral yellow, gray, white, rust, and blue. You can feel the boundary between living moisture and altered volcanic interior. It is not a wall, it is a gradient of conditions. The same rain touches leaf and sulfur, root and ash, forest soil and acid lake. And as the mist moves across the basin, the lake's strangeness becomes a matter of atmosphere as much as chemistry. There is a special stillness in a crater, because the land curves around you and holds sound close. At Ijen, that enclosure makes the lake feel hidden from the wider world, though the sky remains open above it. You can imagine your voice becoming smaller here, not because silence is imposed, but because the shape of the place invites quiet. The crater walls gather the air. The lake gathers the light. We gather our attention and let it settle. This bowl-like form comes from volcanic history. Eruptions build cones and layers, while collapse, erosion, and later activity reshape them. Kawah Ijen sits within a larger volcanic complex, where older structures and younger vents make a layered landscape. You can think of the crater as the visible opening of a deep history. one surface expression among many. The blue acid lake is the most memorable feature, but it belongs to a wider architecture of fire-cooled stone, rain-carved slopes, and hidden heat. The lake's basin collects water because the crater gives it a place to rest. Without that depression, rain and hydrothermal fluids would travel elsewhere, becoming streams, springs, or vapor. Here they gather long enough to become concentrated. That is one simple reason Ijen is so strange. The right shape, the right volcanic gases, the right climate, and the right ongoing heat have met in one location. You can feel the delicacy of that combination. It took place to make this lake. Many landscapes are defined by what they release, but Ijen is defined by what it holds. It holds rain inside volcanic walls, it holds sulfur near vents, it holds blue color in a basin of gray rock. The holding is not permanent because water leaves and chemistry changes, yet it is steady enough to create a recognizable world. You and I can return to it in thought, and the lake is still there, cupped by the mountain. The crater walls also protect the lake from feeling ordinary. A shoreline at sea level might open outward toward distance, but this shoreline turns inward. Wherever you look, the basin curves back toward itself. The lake's surface seems less like a passage and more like a pause. You can imagine sitting above it, as dawn or dusk moves slowly through the air. Nothing asks you to decide anything. The place is complete in its enclosed quiet, and as we rest inside that volcanic bowl, we can begin to hear how the crater's shape affects every breath of vapor rising from the water and stone. Steam and gas do not move through Ijen in a straight, simple way. They rise from vents, drift along slopes, meet cooler air, and bend with wind moving around the crater walls. Sometimes vapor may spread low across the ground, softening the outlines of stones. Sometimes it lifts in thin columns before dissolving into cloud. You can picture these movements without strain, each plume entering the air and becoming invisible. The mountain breathes, and the sky absorbs the breath. The gases themselves come from deeper processes. Magma, or hot rock below the crater, releases volatile compounds, and hydrothermal fluids carry them through fractures. Sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, and acidic gases may be part of this unseen mixture. Some enter the lake and help maintain its acidity. Others emerge through fumaroles and condense minerals around their openings. We describe them gently because the facts are enough. They make the lake strange without needing to make it dramatic. When sulfur gases cool near the surface, yellow sulfur can form in bright deposits. The color is vivid against gray volcanic ground, almost like sunlight stored in mineral form. You can imagine soft yellow crusts and masses near steaming vents, shaped by heat, condensation, and time. They are not decorative, though they appear beautiful. They are evidence of the mountain's chemistry becoming solid enough to touch with the eye. In the crater's dimness, yellow sulfur and blue water answer each other quietly. The blue flames associated with Ijen belong to this same sulfur story. At night, when hot sulfur-rich gases ignite, their combustion can produce blue light. From a distance, the flame may seem to flow along the ground, because burning gas moves where it escapes from cracks. You can let the image remain small and soft. Blue flame near the vents, blue acid lake below, dark crater walls around them. The color repeats like a low note in music. This repetition gives Ijen an atmosphere unlike many volcanic lakes. One blue is water-colored by chemistry and light. Another blue is flame shaped by sulfur combustion. Both arise from the same deep system, yet they appear in different states, liquid and fire, basin and flicker. You can rest with that paradox. Earth is able to hold opposites without discomfort. It lets cool-looking acidic water and warm blue flame share a single crater. As we drift past the vents in thought, the mountain's breath fades behind us, and the lake's hidden layers begin to feel deeper and more still. A crater lake can have layers even when the surface looks uniform. Differences in temperature, dissolved minerals, and density may cause waters to arrange themselves in subtle ways. At Ijen, heavy, mineral-rich acidic water can behave differently from fresher rainwater, entering at the top or edges. You can imagine the lake not as a single simple body, but as a slow vertical world. Light touches the surface. chemistry settles below. Heat and dissolved matter move through the depths. These hidden layers matter because they help explain the lake's behavior over time. A storm may add fresh rain near the surface. Hydrothermal inputs may add heat and dissolved substances deeper down. Wind may mix some parts of the water, while density differences may resist complete mixing. We do not need to see this directly to feel its elegance. The lake holds quiet structure beneath its color. It is not flat, even when it looks smooth. The depth of the lake also contributes to its presence. A broad, opaque surface hides the basin below, and your imagination descends where your eye cannot. The bottom may hold fine sediments, altered minerals, and materials washed in from the crater walls. There, in the dark water, particles settle through acidity and stillness. You can picture them falling slowly, grain by grain, through blue-green water that no sunlight fully enters. The crater has a floor beneath its floor. Sediment in an acidic volcanic lake is not merely mud. It can record chemical conditions, erosion, hydrothermal input, and changes in the surrounding environment. Layer after layer may form quietly, each one carrying evidence of rainier periods, stronger gas input, or slope erosion. You can imagine the lake bottom as a soft archive, written without words. It receives what falls. It keeps what settles. It waits beneath the blue. There is something restful about unseen layering. Your own body has layers of breath, warmth, thought, and sleep. The lake has layers of temperature, chemistry, light, and sediment. From above, both may seem simple. Beneath, there is depth without hurry. Ijen reminds us that stillness is often organized, not empty. The calm surface does not deny the complexity below. It protects it. And as our attention sinks through those hidden layers, we begin to sense how time itself collects inside the water. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake is not ancient in the way an ocean basin is ancient, but it belongs to a volcanic system with a long memory. Craters form, lakes appear, chemistry shifts, and eruptions or hydrothermal changes may alter the basin. Rainy seasons fill and dilute. Drier times concentrate. Gas input varies. The lake is a changing feature within a much older mountain landscape. You can feel time here not as a line, but as a slow circulation. Volcanic landscapes often remind us that Earth builds and reshapes at once. Lava and ash create high ground. Weather breaks it down. Acidic fluids alter it from within. Streams carry pieces away. At Ijen, this cycle is visible in every slope and stain. You look at the crater wall and see both formation and soft undoing. Rock is present, but also becoming something else. The lake is present, but also changing through every season. Seasonal rain can influence the lake's level and chemistry. More rain may raise the water and dilute some dissolved substances. Less rain may allow concentration to increase. Changes in hydrothermal input may alter temperature or acidity. The crater is never completely static, even when it feels still from the rim. You can imagine scientists returning over time, noticing small differences in color, water level, gas, and temperature. Their work is careful because the lake speaks gradually. For a listener drifting towards sleep, this slow change can feel reassuring. Nothing here needs instant understanding. The mountain itself takes its time. It measures change in rainfall, mineral reaction, steam flow, and sediment. We can borrow that pace. You can let thoughts loosen and settle, the way particles settle through the lake. The Ijen crater becomes a place where change is not pressure. It is simply movement spread over time. Even the word strange becomes softer when held long enough. Strange does not have to mean alarming. It can mean rare, concentrated, deeply particular. Ijen is strange because it brings together blue, acidic water, sulfur fire, volcanic gases, heavy minerals, mist, and crater silence in one enclosed landscape. It is strange the way a dream is strange when all its parts belong together. The waking logic cannot arrange them easily. You accept it, and it becomes peaceful. And as time continues to gather in the basin, we turn toward the small forms of life and absence that make the lake feel even more otherworldly. The Ijen Lake is not filled with familiar freshwater life. You do not picture reeds swaying at the edge, or fish rising in rings, or dragonflies tracing warm air above clear shallows. The acidity changes that expectation. It creates a place where ordinary aquatic communities cannot easily settle. Yet the absence of those familiar signs gives the lake a quiet purity of form. You see water, mineral, vapor, and stone, with almost nothing to distract the eye from the basin's color. Life near and around Ijen adapts to gradients. At some distance from the most acidic water and active vents, plants can return where soil, rainfall, and chemistry allow. On outer slopes, green vegetation softens the volcanic land. In damp niches, mosses and small plants may hold moisture. Microbial communities may occupy mineral surfaces or acidic waters in ways that are not visible from a distance. You can imagine life here as careful and selective, appearing where the conditions open a door. Microbes in acidic volcanic environments are among Earth's quiet specialists. Some tolerate acidity that would exclude many other organisms. Some use chemical reactions involving sulfur or iron as part of their way of living. We do not need to turn them into spectacle. They are small presences in a large chemical landscape, living by rules older than forests. When you think of them, think of patience at a scale almost too small to see. Life does not always need softness around it. This makes Ijen feel connected to other extreme environments, from acidic springs to deep hydrothermal systems beneath the sea. In each place, life teaches us that Earth is more flexible than habit suggests. You and I may look for green leaves and clear streams, but the planet also makes homes in hot water, acid, darkness, salt, and mineral crust. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake sits within that larger lesson. It is not empty. It is different. At the margins, where acidic water meets rainwater, seepage, or mineral surfaces, chemistry can shift in tiny zones. These transitions may be subtle, but life often pays attention to subtlety. A slight change in pH, temperature, or dissolved minerals can matter greatly to small organisms. You can picture the edges not as lines, but as soft negotiations. Here the lake touches stone. Here rain thins the chemistry. Here vapor wets the surface. Here life may find a margin. And as we follow those margins outward, the crater begins to open again into forested slopes, cloud, and rain-softened volcanic ground. Outside the immediate basin, the Ijen landscape holds a different kind of quiet. The air can smell of wet leaves, cool soil, and distant mineral steam. Trees gather moisture from passing cloud. Ferns and low plants settle into the damp volcanic earth. You can feel the temperature soften here, less mineral and enclosed, more green and breathable. The crater lake remains nearby in thought, but the surrounding ecosystem reminds us that volcanic land can be fertile as well as strange. Volcanic soils often become rich over time as ash and rock weather into fine mineral material. Rain, roots, microbes, and organic matter work together to make the ground able to support plants. In the Ijen highlands, this living surface exists beside the altered crater interior. You can imagine the contrast from above, a blue acidic basin held among green ridges and clouded slopes. The same volcanic origin that makes the lake unusual also helps nourish the wider land. This contrast is one of the gentle wonders of Ijen. A few changes in chemistry, drainage, and heat can create very different worlds side by side. Inside the crater, acidity dominates. Outside, where water is less altered and soils can develop, vegetation returns. You can walk in thought from blue mineral water to damp green leaves without leaving the mountain. The landscape changes its voice, but not its source. Mist links these zones together. It drifts over forest, crosses the rim, slips into the crater, and dissolves above the lake. Moisture does not respect the boundaries we draw in our minds. It moves from leaf to rock, from cloud to sulfur, from cool slope to warm vent. You can breathe with that movement. The air is one air, though it carries different scents in different places. Green, mineral, wet, smoky, cool. The sounds change as well. In the forested outer slopes, there may be small calls, leaf movement, distant water, and rain ticking softly on broad surfaces. Near the crater, Those sounds thin into wind and vapor. We move between them slowly, letting each sound fall away before the next one arrives. Igen's strangeness is not isolated from life. It is held within a broader, quiet ecosystem that knows how to surround it. And as the forested air folds back toward the crater rim, we return to the question of why this particular lake feels so unlike anywhere else. Part of the answer is rarity. Acid crater lakes exist in several volcanic regions, but Ijen combines strong acidity, large size, vivid blue color, sulfur vents, and visible blue flames in a way that feels unusually concentrated. It gathers many volcanic signs into one place. You can stand in thought at the rim and see chemistry, geology, atmosphere, and light all speaking together. The lake does not need movement to be compelling. Its conditions are already complete. Another part of the answer is contrast. The lake looks cool, but it belongs to heat. It looks serene, but it is chemically intense. It sits in a crater shaped by fire, but it is filled with water from rain and hydrothermal sources. Blue flame may appear near blue water, yet each blue arises from a different process. You can hold these contrasts gently, as if they were stones warmed in the hand. They do not cancel each other, they make the place whole. The human eye is drawn to color, and Ijen's color is unusually persuasive. It asks us to look longer. But the longer we look, the more the lake changes from an image into a system. We begin to understand that the beauty is not separate from acidity, sulfur, gas, and rock alteration. The beauty comes through them. This is a quiet lesson in attention. Sometimes what seems beautiful from a distance becomes even more beautiful when its difficult chemistry is understood. For sleep, that lesson can soften the mind. You do not have to remove complexity in order to rest. Complexity can become gentle when it is paced slowly. The Ijen crater lake gives us detail after detail, but none of it needs to hurry. Acidity, mineral color, sulfur deposition, hydrothermal circulation, crater shape, mist, rain and forest can all settle into one slow image. You are not studying for an answer. You are drifting through understanding. The lake's strangeness also comes from how hidden processes become visible there. Most of Earth's chemical work happens quietly, beneath soil, inside stone, under oceans, or within tiny pores. At Ijen, some of that hidden work rises to the surface in visible blue water and yellow sulfur. The mountain lets you see a little of its interior life. It does not reveal everything. It reveals enough. And as we let the visible and invisible meet, the crater becomes a kind of doorway into Earth's quieter depths. Beneath Ijen, heat remains the deep engine of the system. It does not have to appear as open lava to shape the landscape. Heat can move water, release gases, alter minerals, and sustain the hydrothermal pathways that feed the lake's chemistry. You can picture the warmth below as steady rather than bright, a buried glow that makes the mountain breathe through cracks and vents. The lake is the cool-looking surface of that warmth. Volcanic gases are like messages from depth. They carry information about magma, hot rock, and chemical reactions occurring far below the visible crater. When they dissolve into water, they change the lake. When they escape through fumaroles, they leave deposits and vapor. Scientists can read these gases carefully, but we can also feel their presence through atmosphere. The scent of sulfur, the steam in the air, the yellow crust on stone, and the acid blue lake are all parts of one message. The mountain's interior is not a separate world. It reaches the surface through fluid, gas, heat, and mineral change. That connection makes Ijen feel alive in the geological sense. Though not alive like an animal or plant, it is active, breathing, adjusting, and expressing conditions from below. You can rest with that kind of aliveness. It has no hurry in this telling. It simply continues its ancient work. When we imagine depth beneath the crater, we do not need to descend into darkness with fear. We can think of warm stone, fractures filled with fluid, gases moving slowly upward, and rainwater becoming part of hidden circulation. The system is complex, but the image can remain calm. Everything moves according to gradients of heat, pressure, chemistry, and permeability. Water follows pathways. Gas finds openings. Minerals respond. The lake receives. This receiving is perhaps the gentlest word for Ijen. The crater receives rain. The lake receives gases. The slopes receive mist. The forest receives ash-weathered soil. Your mind receives the image and lets it slow. We are not forcing meaning from the place. We are allowing its processes to arrive in their own order, one after another, like low waves reaching a shore. The mountain's strangeness becomes quiet, and as the hidden heat continues below, the surface returns again to mist, color, and the feeling of standing beside something very old. The age of a landscape is not always measured only in years. It can be felt in the way processes overlap, each one slower than daily thought. At Ijen, rain falls in ordinary weather, but it enters extraordinary chemistry. Rock seems solid, but acidic fluids alter it over time. Steam rises and vanishes, while sulfur remains as a deposit. The lake looks still, yet its composition is always being renewed. You can feel many clocks ticking softly at once. Some clocks are quick, like vapor moving across a vent. Some are seasonal, like rainfall changing the lake level. Some belong to decades of monitoring and change. Others reach farther back into volcanic construction and erosion. We do not need to separate them sharply. The crater lets them coexist. You can imagine time itself as layered mist, with near things and far things visible together for a moment before cloud passes through again. This layered time helps explain why Ijen feels so dreamlike. In dreams, different times can occupy one room. At Ijen, the same thing happens through geology. Recent steam rises from ancient rock. Rain from last night joins water shaped by years of acidity. Sulfur forming today rests on deposits from earlier breaths of the mountain. The lake's present color belongs to long histories of heat and weather. It is always now and never only now. You might feel this as a kind of permission to slow down. The mind often wants to finish, label, and move on. Ijen offers a different pace. It says that a place can be known by returning attention to it again and again without exhausting it. You look at the blue water, you notice sulfur, you notice mist, you notice the crater wall. Each detail opens into another. None of them demands a conclusion. There is no need to resolve the strangeness. The lake remains strange because it is faithful to its conditions, not because it hides a puzzle. Rain, gas, heat, acid, rock, light, and enclosed shape all gather there. We can understand many parts and still feel wonder. In fact, the wonder may become steadier because it is grounded in real processes. The dream is made of chemistry. And as the night becomes softer around the rim, our attention drifts back toward the lake's surface, where even reflection behaves differently. On many lakes, the surface offers a mirror of sky, trees, and shore. At Ijen, the surface can seem more opaque, more inward, because suspended minerals and dissolved substances change how light travels through it. You may see a dim reflection in calm moments, but the lake often feels like it is looking back from within itself rather than reflecting the world above. The blue is not only on the surface. It seems held throughout the water. This inward quality makes the lake feel private. You look down and instead of seeing the sky clearly returned, you see the lake's own color. It transforms what reaches it. That is part of its strange beauty. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake receives light, alters it, and offers something quieter, cloudier, and more mineral in return. It is water with a voice of its own. The surface may also be lightly disturbed by wind, falling condensation, or subtle movement from inputs and temperature differences. Small ripples spread without sparkle in dim light. Vapor passes over them, sometimes hiding the water completely for a few breaths. Then the blue returns. You can feel how this rhythm eases attention. Appear, fade, appear again. The lake is not performing change. It is simply living inside weather. At the shore, the meeting of water and stone may show pale mineral edges, damp streaks, and altered textures. Acidic water can leave marks where levels rise and fall, and where evaporation or chemical reactions concentrate certain materials. The boundary is not lush with reeds. It is spare, mineral, and quiet. You can imagine kneeling only in thought, looking closely at the margin where blue water touches pale rock. The edge seems delicate because it is so chemically alive. This is another reason the place feels otherworldly. Familiar lakes often comfort us with signs of life at their edges. Ijen comforts differently, through stillness, color, and the honesty of mineral process. It asks less of the ear and more of the gaze. It is a landscape of subtle hissing, cool air, damp stone, and blue opacity. You can let that sensory world replace any restless thought, one quiet detail at a time, and as the lake hides and reveals itself through mist, the crater walls rise again in our awareness, holding the basin like cupped hands. The walls around Kawah Ijen are not smooth. They carry slopes, ledges, broken rock, altered zones, and paths where water has run downward in rainy seasons. From the rim, they may look steep and still, but every surface has been shaped by weather. Rain loosens particles, acidic vapor changes minerals, gravity draws fragments lower, wind carries fine dust. You can picture the walls breathing slowly through erosion, never fixed, never hurried. Their colors frame the lake's blue in a way that makes the water seem even more vivid. Gray ash and pale altered rock calm the eye. Yellow sulfur brightens certain places near vents. Rust-colored stains mark iron-rich zones. When mist passes, these colors blur into one another. You can imagine the crater as a low-toned painting with one luminous center. The lake's color feels brighter because everything around it is subdued. The geology of such walls tells of construction and alteration together. Volcanic material was built up through eruptions and deposits. Later, gases, fluids, rain, and weather began changing it. Some rocks became weaker or lighter in color as minerals reacted. Others held their darker volcanic character. The crater wall is not one kind of stone. It is a conversation among many materials, each responding differently to heat, acid, water, and time. When you stand in thought near the rim, the slope below can make depth feel physical. Your eyes travel downward before your body moves. The lake seems far enough to be quiet, close enough to be present. Air rises from the basin carrying mineral scent. The rim catches cooler wind. Your skin notices the difference. The whole crater becomes a breathing chamber, with temperature and smell moving through it in slow layers. We can let the walls stand for the kind of containment that helps sleep. They hold the lake the way darkness holds a room. They do not close the sky, but they make a sheltered interior. Within that interior, the blue acid lake rests, steam moves, sulfur forms, and time slows. You are not outside in a wide, busy world. You are inside a natural bowl of stillness. And as the crater holds us in that enclosed quiet, the lake's outflow reminds us that even enclosed places are part of wider movement. Water from Ijen does not remain forever in the basin. Some of it leaves through drainage routes, joining streams that carry dissolved minerals away from the crater. As the water moves outward, it meets other waters and begins to change. Acidity may be diluted. Minerals may precipitate or remain dissolved, depending on conditions. You can imagine a thread of lake water traveling into the lower landscape, gradually becoming less like the crater and more like the valley. This movement gives the strange lake a wider influence. It is not isolated, even though it feels enclosed. The chemistry formed in Kawah Ijen can pass into river systems, soils, and sediments beyond the crater. In scientific terms, this matters for understanding water quality and volcanic impacts. In our slower language, it means the mountain's blue heart sends a faint signature outward. The lake's memory travels downhill. As acidic water mixes with fresher streams, reactions continue. Some dissolved metals may settle out as minerals when conditions shift. Some acidity may be neutralized by contact with other rocks and waters. The vivid chemistry of the crater becomes dispersed, softened, and transformed. You can picture this as a gradual fading of intensity rather than a sharp change. A strong color enters clear water and becomes pale, then paler, while still belonging to its origin. The wider watershed receives this influence as part of its own life. Streams carry sediment, minerals, organic matter, and rain from many sources, and Ijen's crater water is one unusual contributor. Downstream environments are shaped by mixing, dilution, and local geology. The story becomes broader and quieter with distance. The lake remains the source of strangeness, but the valley translates it into new forms. This outward flow is comforting because it shows that even rare places participate in ordinary cycles. Water gathers, changes, leaves, mixes, and returns to sky. The Ijen Lake may be chemically extreme, but it is still part of the planetary circulation of water. Clouds do not refuse it, rain does not avoid it. Gravity gives it pathways. The world includes the strange without needing to separate it. And as the lake's chemistry travels outward in softened form, we return again to the high crater where the color is still concentrated and still quiet. The high altitude of Ijen helps shape the feeling of the place. Air can be cooler than the lowlands, especially at night and near dawn. Mist forms easily when moist air meets the mountain. The temperature against your skin may feel refreshing, while vapor near vents adds brief touches of warmth. You can imagine this gentle contrast as we remain near the crater: cool breath, damp clothing, warm mineral steam, and the blue lake below. Altitude also changes the light. Morning can arrive slowly over ridges, touching the crater rim before reaching the water. Shadows linger in the basin. Clouds may pass below or across the slopes, making the lake appear suspended between sky and earth. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake seems especially strange in that filtered light because its color does not quite belong to either shadow or sun. It holds its own glow. This kind of light invites unhurried attention. You do not glance at Ijen and understand it. You watch it through shifting mist, through softening dawn, through changes in vapor and cloud. The lake reveals itself by degrees. One moment the shoreline appears, another moment the far wall disappears. The water brightens, then dims, then returns. Each change is slow enough for the breath to follow. The crater's atmosphere can also make distance difficult to judge. Mist compresses space. Vapor hides depth. The lake may seem closer when the air clears, farther when cloud drifts across it. This uncertainty is part of the dreamlike quality. You know the basin is there, but its edges come and go. The landscape does not insist on sharpness. It allows the mind to soften around partial views. In sleep writing, partial views are generous. They let the listener rest without losing the thread. We can say lake, crater, sulfur, mist, and blue, and the image is enough. It does not need to be completed all at once. Ijen itself works this way, appearing through cloud and chemistry, never entirely simple, always quietly near. And as the dawn light touches the basin, the strange lake begins to show its colors again, not as spectacle, but as a slow return. At first, the water may be a dark shape held inside the crater. Then a faint green-blue begins to gather where light reaches the surface. The color strengthens slowly as though rising from below. Pale mist thins above it. Yellow sulfur stains become visible near the vents. Gray rock returns from shadow. You can feel the whole basin waking without urgency, each detail arriving softly into the same ancient place. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake is especially beautiful in these transitions, when night has not fully left and day has not fully settled. The blue flame, if it appeared in darkness, fades as daylight grows. The lake's blue becomes dominant again. One kind of blue gives way to another. Fire withdraws into memory, and water takes the morning. You can rest inside that exchange because it happens without force. Daylight also reveals the lake's scale more clearly. The water occupies a broad basin, large enough to feel like a real inland sea within the crater walls. Its surface stretches beneath the rim, calm in some conditions, faintly rippled in others. You can imagine the eye moving across it from shore to shore, then upward to altered rock and steam. The lake is not a small curiosity. It is a substantial body of acidic water held high in a volcanic bowl. Its size matters because it allows chemistry to accumulate in a way small pools cannot. Rain and hydrothermal input enter over time, and the basin's volume holds a large reservoir of altered water. This makes Ijen important scientifically and visually. It is not only a vent with colored runoff or a small acidic spring. It is a lake wide and deep enough to become a landscape in itself. You can feel the difference in the way the eye rests on it. The surface may seem calm, but the lake's scale gives that calm weight. A small pool can be quickly understood. A large crater lake asks for more attention. It has distance, weather, hidden depth, and changing edges. It can hold mist in one place and clear light in another. It can appear blue-green near the shore and darker toward the middle. Ijen's strangeness spreads across space, becoming not a detail but an atmosphere. And as the lake broadens in the morning light, we drift again toward the invisible chemistry that gives its calm such depth. Acidity is often imagined as something sharp, but in a landscape it can be slow and pervasive. At Ijen, acidic water changes minerals over days, seasons, and years. It dissolves, transports, and deposits. It influences the way sediments form and the way outflowing water interacts with rock downstream. You can think of acidity here as a quiet tendency, a direction in which reactions lean. It is not a single moment. It is an ongoing condition. The lake's chemistry includes sulfate from sulfur gases, chloride from volcanic emissions, and metals leached from surrounding rock. Each component has its own source and behavior. Together, they create water that is chemically dense compared with ordinary rain-fed lakes. You do not need to hold the details tightly. Let them be like faint stars in a cloudy sky. Sulfur, chlorine, iron, aluminum, and other dissolved substances all help make the lake what it is. These dissolved materials affect color, clarity, density, and the lake's interactions with sediment. They also make the water valuable to scientific observation because changes in composition can indicate changes in the volcanic system. A crater lake can act almost like a natural collector of signals. Gas that might otherwise escape into the air may dissolve. Minerals that might remain hidden in rock may enter solution. The lake becomes a quiet instrument of the mountain. To observe such a lake is to practice patience. One measurement means little without context. Patterns matter. Trends matter. The relation between rainfall, gas emission, temperature, and chemistry matters. Scientists return, compare, and listen through data. We return through imagination and listen through atmosphere. Both forms of attention ask for slowness. The lake rewards neither panic nor haste. You can feel how this scientific patience fits the mood of sleep. The mind does not have to leap. It can follow one gentle cause into another. Rain dilutes, gas acidifies, rock dissolves, minerals color, mist softens, light changes. The sequence becomes almost rhythmic, like breathing. In and out, down and up, cloud and crater, water and stone. And as that rhythm continues, Ijen's strangeness begins to feel less like a question and more like a slow pattern we can remain beside. The blue acid crater lake seems alien because it reveals Earth in a mode we do not meet every day. Most of our daily water is softened by familiarity. Tap water, rain on windows, streams over stone, sea foam at the shore. Ijen's water belongs to the same planet, but it has passed through volcanic chemistry so deeply that it feels transformed. You recognize it and do not recognize it. That double feeling is the heart of its strangeness. There is peace in letting the unfamiliar remain gentle. You do not have to turn away from what is unusual. You can sit with it quietly, the way you might sit beside a dark window while rain moves outside. The lake does not ask to be touched or entered. It asks only to be seen accurately, from a careful distance, as a natural body shaped by rare conditions. Its beauty is not diminished by its acidity. Its acidity is part of its beauty. This is true of many geological wonders. A glacier is beautiful because it is ice in motion. A canyon is beautiful because water and time have removed stone. A salt flat is beautiful because evaporation has left minerals behind. Ijen is beautiful because volcanic gases, rain, crater shape, and light have made a blue acidic lake inside a mountain. Beauty often comes from process. When we understand the process, the beauty becomes steadier. You can carry that steadiness into the body. Your breathing can become slower, like mist moving over the crater. Your thoughts can become less defined, like the far wall behind vapor. The lake remains blue, whether or not you hold every fact about it. The mountain remains quiet, whether or not anyone is watching. We are only here for a while, drifting through knowledge at the pace of sleep. The strangeness of Ijen does not need to wake you. It can lull you because it is vast, slow, and indifferent in the calmest sense. It does not hurry toward meaning. It rests in its own conditions. You can rest beside it. The acid lake, the sulfur vents, the blue flames, and the misted crater all continue without demanding anything from you. And as the thought of demand fades, we settle lower into the basin's quiet, where the water holds color and the stones hold warmth from far below. Imagine now the crater in a long, calm hour after dawn, when the light has fully arrived but the air still feels cool. The lake lies blue-green beneath the slopes, and thin steam moves from vents in pale strands. The rocks near the fumaroles are stained yellow, white, grey, and rust. The scent of sulfur remains woven through the damp air. You stand with us in stillness, noticing how each sense finds the same place from a different direction. Your eyes find color first, your skin finds temperature next. Your breathing notices the mineral scent. Your ears receive the small hiss of vapor and the low hush of wind against rock. The body understands landscape before the mind names it. This is why Ijen feels so complete. It is not only a fact about acidity or blue flame. It is a full sensory world, built from water, heat, stone, air, and time. The lake's surface may appear almost opaque, like a glaze laid across the basin. Beneath it, the water carries dissolved minerals in quantities ordinary lakes do not hold. Around it, altered rocks show where acidic fluids and gases have worked on the crater walls. Above it, cloud and sunlight change the color minute by minute. The whole basin is a continuous exchange, though from where we rest, the exchange feels still. There is no need to imagine movement faster than this. Steam curls, mist drifts, light shifts, water receives, sediment settles. These are enough. The sleepful mind can follow them without strain. Each process has a soft edge. Each detail returns us to the lake. Ijen's strangeness becomes a cradle of attention, rocking slowly between what we see and what we know. And as we remain there, the crater's mineral colors begin to feel like a language, one that speaks without urgency through yellow sulfur, pale stone, and blue acidic water. The yellow sulfur seems to glow even when the light is soft, because it carries a brightness different from leaf, sand, or ordinary stone. You can see it resting near vents, gathered where hot, sulfur-bearing gases have cooled enough to become solid. Around it, pale, altered rock forms a muted ground, and the Ijen Lake answers with its blue-green silence below. We are looking at chemistry turned into color, and the colors do not argue with one another. They simply hold their places. The pale stones around the vents may include minerals formed by acidic alteration, where volcanic gases and heated fluids have changed the original rock. Some minerals break down, while new ones appear in their place. Clays, sulfates, and iron stains can form in these conditions, each one carrying a small record of water, acid, heat, and air. You do not need to name every mineral to feel the pattern. The crater wall has been touched by the same breath that makes the lake strange. That breath is steady in the imagination, rising through cracks that lead downward into warmer regions of the volcano. It brings sulfur compounds upward, and sometimes it brings acidic gases that dissolve easily into moisture. Where the gas meets cool surfaces, it condenses. Where it enters water, it changes the water's chemistry. Where it escapes into night air and burns, it may become blue flame. You can follow one invisible source into many visible falls, all gathered around Kawah Ijen. The lake itself feels like the most complete expression of that source. It is wide enough to hold the mountain's emissions, deep enough to hide layers, and enclosed enough to concentrate what enters it. Rain keeps arriving from the sky, yet the volcanic input keeps shaping the lake back toward acidity. This balance gives Ijen its unusual endurance. The crater does not make its blue water once and stop. It keeps making it quietly, through repeated exchange. In that ongoing exchange, the mountain feels less like a fixed object and more like a slow conversation. Rock speaks through minerals. Water speaks through color. Gas speaks through vapor and flame. Rain speaks by diluting, carrying, and returning. We listen by noticing how each part changes the next, and by letting the changes happen slowly in the mind. The conversation has no sharp edges tonight. It is only a low and steady murmur inside stone. And as the mineral language settles around us, the lake's unusual acidity begins to feel like a kind of deep grammar beneath every visible color. Acidic water does not merely sit in the basin as an isolated fact. It shapes nearly every relationship inside the crater. It affects the shoreline, the sediments, the dissolved metals, and the way incoming rain becomes part of the lake. You can think of acidity as the lake's underlying mood, not emotional, but chemical, guiding what can remain solid and what must dissolve. At Ijen, that mood is unusually strong, and it gives the lake its character. When acid water touches volcanic rock, it can release elements that ordinary water would hold more tightly in place. Iron, aluminum, and other metals may enter solution, joining sulfate and chloride in the lake's complex mixture. Some materials stay dissolved because the conditions allow them to remain mobile. Others may settle when waters mix or chemistry shifts. You can imagine countless tiny exchanges happening at the edges and below the surface, too small to see, yet responsible for the lake's strange presence. The color we admire is tied to this chemistry, though no single explanation contains it completely. Light passes into mineral-rich water, scatters through suspended particles, and returns to the eye altered. The crater walls contribute pale reflections. Cloud softens the brightness. Depth changes the tone. You see turquoise, but what you are really seeing is a whole system giving shape to light. The Ijen blue acid crater lake turns chemistry into atmosphere. This is why the lake feels calmer the longer we stay with it. At first, it may seem impossible. A bright color in a volcanic hollow, then each cause arrives gently, and the impossibility becomes a rare arrangement. There is no trick, there is only rain, gas, rock, heat, depth, and light working together. The strangeness remains, but it becomes spacious. You can rest inside an answer that does not close the wonder. In ordinary life, we often separate beauty from process. We say a place is beautiful, then later learn how it formed. At Ijen, the process is the beauty. Without acidity, the water would not be this water. Without sulfur, the crater would not carry its yellow and blue fire. Without mist, the atmosphere would lose some of its softness. Without the volcanic bowl, the lake would not gather it all. And as we hold that whole arrangement, the crater begins to feel like a quiet laboratory made by the earth itself. A laboratory can sound too bright or busy, but this one is dim, damp, and patient. It has no glass walls, only volcanic slopes and cloud. It has no clock ticking on a bench, only seasonal rain, rising gas, and the slow settling of sediment. The Ijen crater lake performs reactions continuously, whether watched or unwatched. You can imagine the basin as a place where the planet mixes its own ingredients calmly and precisely in a blue volcanic vessel. The reactions are not random. They follow the tendencies of matter under certain conditions. Gases dissolve more readily in water, depending on temperature and chemistry. Minerals break down or form depending on acidity and available ions. Hot fluids rise because of heat and pressure. Rain flows downward because of gravity. The whole system is complex, but it is not chaotic in the way the mind sometimes fears. It is ordered by natural laws, and that order can feel deeply soothing. You can listen to that order in the hiss of steam. A fumarole releases gas because pathways exist below it. The gas cools because air surrounds it. Sulfur condenses because the conditions allow a phase change. Acid forms because certain compounds meet water. Each step follows gently from another, like a slow chain of breath. The crater is not doing anything sudden in our telling. It is continuing. This continuity is part of Ijen's sleepful power. Nothing needs a climax. Nothing needs a sharp revelation. The lake remains strange at every moment, and every moment deepens the strangeness without forcing it. You can let your attention move from the water's color to the vapor's path, from the vapor to the sulfur, from sulfur back to the hidden heat. Each movement is circular, like a current moving inside a sheltered basin. The idea of a natural laboratory also reminds us that Earth is always experimenting, though not with intention. It combines pressure, heat, chemistry, climate, and time in different places, and the results are glaciers, coral reefs, salt flats, cave systems, calderas, and lakes like Ijen. Some places are gentle because they are familiar. Others become gentle once we understand them. Ijen belongs to the second kind of calm. And as this quiet experiment continues, the blue lake gathers more meanings than color alone can hold. The lake is a mirror that does not reflect clearly, a basin that receives more than rain, and a surface that reveals the hidden breath of a volcano. It is also a threshold between visible and invisible earth. You see blue water, but you are also seeing gas from depth, minerals from stone, weather from the sky, and light filtered through matter. You stand with us near Kawah Ijen and feel how one view can contain many worlds. This layering makes the lake feel strangely intimate. Although it is large, remote, and geologically complex, it offers itself through simple sensations: cool air on skin, damp mineral scent, pale mist against dark slopes, a blue-green surface held below. You do not need to carry the whole science at once. The senses make a soft doorway, and the science waits behind it, quiet enough to enter only when you are ready. The lake's surface may seem almost still, but the idea of stillness here is subtle. Molecules move, heat diffuses, gas dissolves, rain enters, sediment falls. Ripples cross and vanish. The stillness is not the absence of motion, but the absence of hurry. You can feel that distinction in your own breathing. The body is never completely motionless. It rests by moving slowly and steadily, and the lake rests in something like that rhythm. This is one reason Ijen suits a sleep journey, even though its chemistry is intense. The place shows that strong processes can be quiet when spread across water, stone, and time. A volcanic system can be active without being loud in every moment. An acidic lake can be visually soft. Blue flame can be small and low. The mind learns to uncouple intensity from alarm, and that uncoupling lets the body settle. As we remain beside the crater, the world beyond it begins to fade again. Roads, rooms, screens, and daily tasks grow distant. In their place, there is only a mountain basin under cloud. You can feel your thoughts becoming less crowded, as if the mist over Ijen is passing through them too. The lake holds its color. The mountain holds its breath. We hold the image gently. And as the outer world fades, the lake's silence becomes easier to hear, though silence here is made of many very soft sounds. There is the sound of wind moving over the rim, low and spread thin by open air. There is the faint hiss of fumaroles, steady enough to blend into the background. There may be the small sound of loose grit shifting on a slope, or moisture dripping from stone after mist has passed. You can imagine these sounds not as separate events, but as a soft woven hush around the Ijen lake. They make the quiet audible. Sound behaves differently in an enclosed crater. It can be held, softened, or redirected by the walls. Some noises vanish quickly into open sky, others linger close to the ground. The lake itself, if calm, does not add much sound from waves. Its surface is not a shoreline of breaking surf, but a broad mineral sheet resting in volcanic shelter. You listen, and the absence of familiar water noise makes the place feel even more inward. This inwardness can deepen sleep. The ear receives less and less to follow. The mind stops looking for sharp changes. Steam, wind, and distant stone become enough. The lake remains visually strange but acoustically calm. You can let your breathing match the faint periodic movement of air in the crater, in and out, softer each time. Ijen's stillness does not erase sound. It lowers it into texture. The smell also becomes part of that texture. Sulfur has a distinct mineral presence, and in damp crater air it may seem woven into the mist itself. Wet volcanic rock adds an earthy, stony quality. Cooler air from the rim brings the faint freshness of highland vegetation. You can imagine each breath carrying layers, first mineral, then wet stone, then distant green. The senses blend until the place feels whole. Even the skin participates. Cool mist touches the face. The ground may feel rough through the soles of your imagined steps. Warmth may drift from a vent and then fade as wind shifts. The body learns the crater through contrast, but the contrasts are gentle in this dream. Cool and warm, mineral and green, shadow and blue. Each one arrives and passes without strain. And as the senses soften together, The strange lake becomes less like an object before us and more like an environment we are slowly entering with attention. To enter with attention does not mean to disturb the place. It means allowing the details of Ijen to come closer in the mind. The crater's rim is no longer a distant outline. The altered walls have texture. The sulfur deposits have color. The lake has opacity and depth. The mist has movement. You begin to know the landscape by lingering, the way darkness in a room becomes familiar after the eyes stop resisting it. The lake's opacity is important to this feeling. Clear water invites the eye to look through it, down to stones, plants, or fish. Ijen's water often holds the gaze at or near the surface, because its suspended and dissolved materials make it visually dense. You cannot easily see into it, so the imagination descends instead. The hidden depth becomes a quiet invitation. What cannot be seen becomes part of the rest. This hiddenness is not empty. Beneath the surface, the water column may hold gradients of temperature and chemistry. Fine particles may drift downward. Hydrothermal input may enter through unseen pathways. Sediment may lie on the bottom, altered by acidic conditions. The lake's concealed interior is a real place, though we meet it mainly through inference. For sleep, inference is gentle. It lets the mind move without needing sharp images. You can picture the bottom as a calm, dim floor of mineral sediment, far below the changing light. Particles from the walls settle there after rain and erosion. Chemical precipitates may form as conditions shift. The sediments store traces of the crater's history, layer upon layer. They do not speak loudly. They keep a record through accumulation, the slowest kind of memory. The thought of a lake bottom inside a crater can be very soothing. It is the resting place within a resting place, a basin within a basin. The crater holds the lake, and the lake holds the sediment, and the sediment holds time. You can imagine your own thoughts settling in the same nested way, layer by layer, into a quieter part of the mind. Nothing is lost. It is simply laid down. And as those sediments settle in darkness, the surface above continues receiving mist, rain, and the faint breath of volcanic gas. Rain at Ijen is not just weather falling onto scenery. It is an active part of the crater's chemistry. Each rainfall adds water to the lake, washes minerals from the slopes, cools surfaces, and feeds seepage routes through volcanic rock. You can imagine rain arriving softly, one drop after another, dimpling the blue surface where it falls. The sound would be delicate at first, then fuller, then soft again as the shower passes over the rim. In a rainstorm, the crater's colors would change. Gray rocks darken, yellow sulfur becomes richer. Pale, altered surfaces shine faintly. The lake's blue may flatten under ripples and mist. Steam may appear thicker where cool rain meets warmer vents. You can feel the air become more saturated, carrying the smell of whetstone and sulfur in a slow, heavy blend. The whole place is rinsed, though not made ordinary. Rain only brings Ijen deeper into itself. Rainwater may begin clear, but it does not remain chemically simple in the crater. It runs over altered rock, mixes with acidic surfaces, and joins the lake where it becomes part of the larger solution. Some rain seeps downward, perhaps entering warmed pathways before returning as hydrothermal fluid. You can follow the drop's journey without urgency. Cloud to slope, slope to crack, crack to heat, heat to lake. The cycle is intimate and slow. This is another reason the lake seems to belong equally to sky and underworld. Its water comes from above, but its character comes largely from below. It is rainfall transformed by volcanic breath. When you look at the blue surface, you are seeing a meeting between cloud and magma-heated rock, though the magma itself may remain unseen. The lake is the visible agreement between two realms that usually feel separate. That agreement changes with seasons and conditions. In wetter periods, dilution may shift concentration. In drier periods, evaporation and continued input may strengthen certain chemical features. The lake level may rise or fall. The shoreline may reveal or cover mineral marks. Ijen is not a fixed painting. It is a slow composition rewritten by climate, heat, and gas through time. And as rain becomes lake, and lake becomes outflow, the mountain's chemistry begins its quiet travel beyond the crater again. A stream carrying water from the Ijen system can bear the imprint of acidity and dissolved minerals. As it moves away from the lake, it enters a different landscape where other waters, rocks, and soils begin to modify it. You can imagine that stream in a valley below, its chemistry gradually changing as it mixes and flows. The intensity of the crater becomes stretched into distance, softened by movement and contact. Even the lake's strongest qualities can become diffuse. This movement connects the crater to a larger watershed. High mountain rain, volcanic drainage, forest streams, and valley waters all become part of the same broader circulation. The Ijen Lake may seem secluded, but water refuses to remain only symbolic. It moves where gradients lead it. It carries dissolved substances, warmth, acidity, and sediment until other conditions transform them. The wider landscape is a slow conversation among waters. At points where acidic water meets less acidic streams, minerals may precipitate and leave colored deposits. Iron can stain stones with orange or reddish tones. Other elements may settle or remain in solution depending on chemistry. The stream bed becomes another page in the mineral language of the volcano. You can picture the colors fading downstream as if the crater's handwriting becomes lighter the farther it travels from the source. This outward travel does not remove the lake's mystery. It expands it. The blue crater basin is the visible center, but its influence moves invisibly through water chemistry and sediment. A strange place is rarely contained only within its most beautiful view. It has edges, pathways, and consequences that reach outward. In Ijen, these pathways remain part of a natural landscape shaped by rain, gravity, and volcanic material. You can rest with the idea that everything belongs to a path. Even still, water has an origin and a leaving. Even altered stone has a before and after. Even vapor that disappears into air has not vanished, but changed form and mixed with the sky. The Ijen blue acid crater lake becomes one pause in a longer journey, a bright and mineral pause inside moving water. And as that thought drifts downstream, we return once more to the crater, where the pause is deepest and the blue is most concentrated. From above, the lake's shape may seem almost simple, a curved basin inside steep volcanic walls. But the simplicity is visual, not geological. Its edges are shaped by old eruptions, collapse, erosion, hydrothermal alteration, and the continuing work of water. The shore is not a perfect line. It is a meeting zone where lake level, slope, sediment, and rock texture all matter. You can trace it slowly with your eyes, letting the curve guide your breathing. The crater's steepness affects how material enters the lake. Rain can wash loose particles from slopes. Small rockfalls may send fragments downward. Acidic vapor can weaken or alter certain surfaces. Over time, gravity carries weathered material into the basin. The lake receives it all, not with intention but by being lower than the walls around it. This is how basins keep history. They gather what the surrounding land releases. Those gathered materials may settle through water that is itself chemically unusual. Sediment grains do not fall through neutral conditions. They pass through acidic, mineral-rich layers that can alter them further. Some dissolve partly, some remain. Some become coated with new minerals. You can imagine descent inside the water as a slow transformation, each particle changed slightly on its way down. Even falling dust has a journey. The lake floor, hidden from ordinary sight, may be one of the calmest parts of the entire system. Above it, mist changes and gases enter. Around it, slopes, weather, and rain falls. But at the bottom, fine material gathers in darkness, layer by layer. This is not the abyssal plain of the ocean, but it carries a similar feeling of quiet accumulation. The bottom holds what has finished drifting for now. There is a sleepful lesson in that phrase, for now. Nothing in geology is absolutely finished, yet many things come to temporary rest. A grain settles, a mineral forms, a lake holds a level for a season, a cloud rests against a rim before moving on. You can allow your own thoughts the same temporary rest without asking them to disappear forever. They can settle for now, like sediment in the blue lake. And as the lake floor gathers what falls, the air above gathers what rises, completing the crater's slow vertical exchange. Rising and falling happen together at Ijen. Particles fall from slopes into water. Gas rises from depth into air. Rain falls from cloud into the crater. Vapor rises from vents into mist. Heat moves upward. Dissolved material sometimes settles downward. The landscape is full of vertical motion, but none of it needs to feel abrupt. It is like breathing through stone, water, and sky, upward and downward, received and released, again and again. This vertical exchange helps explain the lake's otherworldly feeling. We are used to landscapes spreading outward across the horizon. Ijen draws attention up and down, rim to lake, lake to hidden depth, vent to sky, rain to basin, gas to flame, sediment to floor. You can feel your attention moving along these vertical paths, descending slowly and rising softly, always returning to the blue center. The crater has a gravity for the mind. The blue flame, when night allows it, is one of the upward signs. It shows gas that has traveled from below and met the open air in a visible way. The lake is a downward sign, collecting rain, minerals, and dissolved gases into a basin. Together they make the crater feel like a hinge between inside and outside Earth. You can imagine this hinge moving very slowly, with no sound except steam and wind. The colors follow the same vertical story. Yellow sulfur forms where gases emerge and cool. Blue-green water gathers lower in the basin. White vapor rises through the air. Dark rock holds the sides between them. These colors are not scattered randomly. They mark pathways of heat, chemistry, and moisture. When you look at Ijen, your eyes are reading the movement of matter through elevation, even before your mind explains it. This is why the scene can feel so orderly despite its strangeness. Everything has a place because every process has a direction. Rain down, gas up, sediment down, vapor up, light across, water outward. The directions weave together without crowding one another. You can breathe with them, letting the mind follow one soft movement at a time. And as those movements weave through the crater, the lake's blue remains steady enough to hold them all. Blue can be a restful color because it often belongs to distance, water, and evening. At Ijen, blue also belongs to acidity, minerals, and sulfur flame. This makes the color both soothing and unfamiliar. You can let that double meaning deepen the atmosphere. The lake is blue like quiet water, but also blue like chemistry made visible. The flame is blue like cold light, though it comes from heat. Ijen's blues are calm because they are strange. When you close your eyes, the color may linger as an afterimage. Not bright turquoise now, but a dim inward blue softened by mist. Around it, the crater walls become dark and protective. Yellow sulfur fades to a low warmth. White vapor moves slowly, then becomes part of the same darkness. The scene does not vanish, it settles behind the eyelids, becoming less visual and more rhythmic. In that inward version of Ijen, the science remains present but softened. You know the lake is acidic, you know sulfur gases rise from heated depths, you know rain feeds the basin and carries chemistry outward, but these facts no longer arrive as separate pieces. They become part of one slow image. The mind does not have to hold them firmly. It can float among them the way mist floats over the lake. This is the value of staying with one place for a long time. Repetition does not become empty when the place is deep enough. Each return to the lake reveals a different aspect of the same calm center. Color, acidity, sulfur, crater shape, rainfall, altered rock, hidden heat, and quiet ecosystems all circle the blue basin. You are not moving away from the topic, you are moving through its layers. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake is strange because it cannot be reduced to one feature. If you say it is blue, you miss the acidity. If you say it is acidic, you miss the beauty. If you say it has blue flame nearby, you miss the rain that keeps the lake filled. If you say it is volcanic, you miss the mist and forest that soften its edges. The place asks for layered attention. And as our attention layers itself around the lake, the surrounding volcanic complex becomes a quiet backdrop, old and broad beneath the mist. Kawah Ijen is part of a wider volcanic region, where cones, ridges, craters, and caldera forms speak of repeated volcanic building. The Blue Lake is the most famous visual center, but it rests within a larger field of slopes and old structures. You can imagine the landscape from high above, softened by cloud, with green ridges and volcanic forms folding into one another. The crater is one opening in a much broader geological body. This wider setting matters because volcanoes rarely exist as isolated shapes. They belong to zones of tectonic movement, magma generation, fracture systems, and long histories of eruption and erosion. Ijen's lake is a surface expression of deeper regional processes, yet from the rim those enormous forces become intimate. They appear as steam, sulfur, altered rock, blue water, and cool air touching your face. The large becomes small enough to feel. The island of Java itself is shaped by volcanic arcs, where tectonic plates and mantle processes help create chains of volcanoes. We do not need to travel far into that story tonight. It is enough to know that Ijen belongs to a long line of mountains made by Earth's deep movement. The crater lake is therefore both local and planetary. It rests in one basin, yet it comes from forces that reach far below and far beyond the visible rim. This can make the listener feel gently scaled down, but not diminished. You stand beside Ijen and sense that the world is older, larger, and more intricate than any single thought. That feeling can be peaceful, because it loosens the pressure of the self. The mountain does not need your effort. The lake does not need your certainty. You can simply be near it, breathing softly. The wider volcanic landscape also explains why heat remains available beneath the lake. Magmatic systems cool slowly. Hydrothermal circulation can persist where heat, water, and pathways remain. The lake's strange chemistry depends on this continuing connection to depth. Without it, rain might slowly make the basin more ordinary. With it, Ijen remains blue, acidic, mineral-rich, and quietly alive in the geological sense. And as that deep heat connects the crater to the larger Earth, the lake's surface continues to hold the sky in its own altered way. Clouds above Ijen often feel close because the mountain rises into moist air. They may graze the rim, spill into the basin, or drift like pale cloth above the lake. When cloud covers the sun, the blue water becomes subdued and milky. When the cloud thins, brightness returns in sections. You can watch the lake change without anything happening to the lake itself. The sky moves and the water answers. This answering is not reflection alone. It is interaction between light and water, sky and mineral suspension. Angle and depth. The lake does not simply copy what is above it. It transforms brightness through its own body. You can imagine sunlight entering the water and losing some colors, scattering others, returning as blue-green softness. The result is less like a mirror and more like a whispered translation. Ijen translates sky into chemistry. The crater walls also affect this translation. Pale, altered surfaces can bounce light back toward the water. Darker volcanic slopes absorb it. Yellow sulfur adds warmth in small patches. Mist diffuses everything. The lake's apparent color is therefore a collaboration of the entire basin, not only the water. This is why the experience of Ijen cannot be separated from its setting. The blue belongs to the crater as much as to the lake. At times, the water may seem almost luminous even under muted light. That effect can feel uncanny, as if the lake were lit from below. In a literal sense, the glow is mostly optical, not an internal lamp. Yet the feeling matters. The mind senses that the lake is carrying something hidden, and the science agrees in its own way. It carries dissolved gases, minerals, acidity, and heat's influence. The appearance and the process meet. You can let that meeting guide the breath. Inhale with the cloud crossing the rim. Exhale with the vapor rising from the vents. Inhale with blue light gathering on the water. Exhale with the lake's color darkening under mist. There is no need to count. The crater has its own pacing, and your body can borrow it for a little while. And as breathing settles into the crater's pace, the question of why Ijen is strange becomes softer, wider, and more restful. It is strange because water here has been transformed without ceasing to look calm. It is strange because fire appears blue at night, where sulfur gas escapes. It is strange because a lake can be visually beautiful and chemically extreme at the same time. It is strange because the same mountain supports damp green slopes and an acid basin within a short distance. You can hold all these truths together as if they were smooth stones resting in your palm. It is also strange because it teaches scale. Tiny molecules change the color of a vast lake. Seasonal rain shifts a system fed by deep heat. Fine sediment records the passing of years. Small microbes may find possibilities where larger life cannot. At Ijen, the very small and very large remain close to one another. You can feel that closeness as a kind of wonder. The lake asks us to trust subtle causes. Not every transformation arrives as a visible event. Some arrive through accumulation, dissolving, cooling, mixing, and settling. A basin becomes acidic because gases continue to enter. A color becomes vivid because minerals and light continue to interact. A crater wall changes because vapor and rain continue their work. The world becomes strange through repeated small actions, and that thought is deeply calming. In your own rest, small actions matter too. One slower breath, one softened thought, one release of tension in the hands, one moment of listening rather than reaching. Ijen's processes are geological, but their rhythm can still feel familiar to the body. Nothing has to change all at once. The lake did not become itself in a single instant of meaning. It became itself by continuing. We continue with it now, not toward an ending, but deeper into the same quiet. The blue water remains below. The sulfur vents breathe along the slope. The crater walls hold their mineral colors. Mist passes through, and the highland air cools again. The scene is stable enough for sleep, yet detailed enough for the mind to wander without leaving it. And as we wander without leaving, the lake's edge draws us closer in thought, where the meeting of water and stone holds some of Ijen's most delicate strangeness. At the shoreline, the blue water touches rock that has already been changed by vapor, rain, and acid. The contact is continuous. Tiny waves, seepage, and changing water levels bring lake chemistry against mineral surfaces. Pale crusts and stains may mark where water has lingered. The edge is not soft with grasses. It is quiet, spare, and mineral, like a place where the mountain is still deciding what form to take. This mineral shoreline gives the lake an austere beauty. There is no crowded growth to hide the relation between water and rock. You can see the meeting clearly, blue against pale gray, damp against dry, acid solution against altered volcanic slope. The simplicity is soothing because it removes distraction. The mind follows one boundary, and that boundary becomes enough. At Ijen, even an edge can feel deep. Edges are often where change is most visible. At the lake margin, evaporation, wetting, drying, and chemical reaction may leave deposits or alter existing minerals. Rainwater running down the slope may meet lake water and create tiny gradients. Sediment may gather in sheltered spots. Each small zone has its own conditions, changing with weather and level. You can imagine the shoreline as a necklace of subtle chemical rooms, each one quiet. The color at the edge may differ from the open water. Shallow areas can appear lighter, more green, or cloudier, depending on suspended material and the color of the bottom beneath. Farther out, the water may deepen into a richer blue-green. Mist can flatten these distinctions, then clear and reveal them again. You watch without needing to name every shade. The shoreline teaches attention through gradual variation. There is something restful about a place without hurry at its edges. Many human edges are busy with use, crossing, and decision. This edge simply exists, receiving small motions of water and slow changes of chemistry. You can imagine sitting near it in thought, not touching, only observing, while the lake breathes softly through vapor nearby. The boundary between water and stone becomes a quiet threshold, and as that threshold holds our attention, the vents higher on the slope remind us that the lake's calm surface is connected to deeper unrest, made gentle by distance and time. The word unrest can be softened here, because the mountain's inner activity does not need to be imagined as loud. Beneath Kawah Ijen, heat remains, fluids circulate, and gases rise. Those movements are part of the volcano's natural state. By the time they reach the surface as steam, sulfur, and lake chemistry, they can appear almost meditative. You are not witnessing a single event. You are noticing a long condition. Fumaroles are places where that condition becomes visible. Steam and gas emerge from openings in the ground. sometimes carrying sulfur compounds that color nearby surfaces. The vent area may look pale, yellow, and mineral encrusted, with vapor drifting in slow pulses. You can imagine the sound as a steady exhale. It is not silence, but it belongs to silence. The crater's quiet includes this breathing. The gas pathways below are shaped by fractures, permeability, heat, and pressure. Water and vapor find roots through the volcanic structure, and those roots may change over time. Some openings strengthen, others fade, and new paths may develop. The surface expression shifts gradually. This is another way Ijen stays strange. It is not only a lake with fixed chemistry, it is part of a living hydrothermal network. That network links the vents and lake together. Gas that escapes from one opening may deposit sulfur. Gas that dissolves elsewhere may help acidify water. Heated fluids may enter beneath the lake or around its margins. Rainfall may feed the system from above. You can picture all of this as a hidden lacework inside the mountain, delicate in pattern though made of rock, fluid and heat. The visible crater is only the topmost embroidery. The image of lacework may feel unexpected for a volcano, but Ijen invites gentle comparisons. Beneath rough stone, pathways can be intricate. Beneath blue water, layers can be subtle. Beneath a sulfur vent, chemistry can be precise. The more closely we imagine the place, the less simple it becomes, and the more restful it feels. Complexity, when held slowly, becomes a kind of softness. And as the mountain's hidden lacework carries warmth upward, the high cool air continues to press softly down over the crater. Cool air altitude settles into the basin during certain hours, giving the crater a layered feel. Warm vapor rises through cooler surroundings, condensing into visible steam. Mist forms where moisture meets temperature change. You can sense the air as something textured rather than empty, with invisible gradients becoming visible through cloud and breath. The lake lies beneath these layers, blue and still, while air moves above it in delicate folds. Temperature contrast is one of the crater's quiet artists. It shapes vapor, affects condensation, influences how gases disperse, and changes the sensation of standing near different surfaces. A step toward a vent might feel warmer, a turn toward the rim might bring cooler wind. Near the lake, moisture may make the air feel heavier. You can let these changes arrive through the skin, each one small enough to soothe rather than startle. The body's awareness of temperature can help the mind ascend. Cool forehead, warm breath, damp air, stone holding a trace of heat. The imagined scene becomes physical, and the physical scene slows thought. We are not analyzing from far away now. We are present inside the crater's atmosphere, letting Kawah Ijen surround us with mineral scent, blue color, and layered air. The place becomes felt. This felt quality matters because science alone can become distant if it is not returned to the senses. So we keep returning. Sulfur is not only a compound, it is yellow against stone and a mineral scent in damp air. Acidity is not only a pH value, it is the reason the lake looks and behaves differently. Hydrothermal circulation is not only a process, it is steam, warmth, and the lake's continued strangeness. The senses keep the knowledge gentle. They prevent it from becoming a list. You see, breathe, feel, and hear the system as one slow environment. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake remains the center, but every surrounding detail helps explain why it feels so unlike ordinary water. It is a whole sensory chemistry held in volcanic form, and as the air cools and warms in subtle layers, the lake continues to hold a color that seems to belong equally to dream and stone. The dreamlike quality of Ijen comes partly from the way its colors do not match our usual expectations. Blue water suggests clarity, coolness, and softness. Yet here, the water is acidic and mineral-rich. Yellow deposits suggest brightness, yet they come from sulfurous volcanic breath. Blue flame suggests coldness, yet it belongs to burning gases. The senses receive familiar colors, and the mind learns new meanings. That gentle mismatch makes the place strange. You can rest in a mismatch when nothing asks you to react quickly. The crater gives you time. It lets you look again and adjust. The blue is water, but not ordinary water. The flame is blue, but not cool. The air is fresh with altitude, yet mineral with sulfur. The green outer slopes are lush, yet near the crater the rock is altered and spare. The place teaches through quiet contradiction. Contradiction can be soothing when it is held by a landscape larger than thought. We do not have to flatten Ijen into a single description. We can say it is beautiful and chemically intense, active and still, enclosed and connected, barren at the lake edge and green beyond the rim. Each phrase is true from a different angle. The lake does not mind being complex, it simply remains itself. In sleep, the mind may drift among these angles without choosing. One moment you see the wide blue basin, another moment you see sulfur crystals near steam, then cloud crossing the rim, then rain dimpling the surface, then hidden heat far below. The order can loosen, the place stays coherent, because all these images belong to Ijen. You can drift and still not be lost. That is the gift of a strongly anchored landscape. Its details may be many, but they gather around a central image. Here, the center is the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake, strange and calm inside its volcanic bowl. Whenever the mind wanders, the blue basin returns. It is like a low note beneath a long piece of music, steady enough to carry everything above it. And as that low blue note continues, the mountain's rain-washed slopes begin to appear again around the crater, softened by distance and cloud. The slopes around Ijen hold the memory of volcanic material weathered into soil, carved by runoff, and softened by vegetation where conditions allow. In the damp highlands, green can return richly outside the most altered zones. Leaves catch mist, roots enter ash-derived soils, small channels guide rain downward. You can imagine the forested areas breathing differently from the crater, with earthier scents and quieter forms of life. This green surrounding does not contradict the acidic lake. It completes the landscape. Volcanoes often create both stark mineral interiors and fertile outer slopes. Ash and lava weather into soils that can nourish plants, while concentrated gases and acidic fluids create harsher zones near vents and crater lakes. Ijen holds both outcomes close together. The mountain gives with one hand and alters with the other, though both are simply natural processes. As mist travels from forest toward crater, it carries a sense of continuity. The same moisture touches leaves, stones, sulfur deposits, and lake surface. The same air moves over green slopes and mineral vents. The same rainfall feeds roots and acidic water. You can feel how the landscape refuses to divide neatly. It is not one world outside and another inside. It is a gradient, and gradients are peaceful because they change slowly. At the boundary zones, plant life may thin as conditions become more altered, drier, steeper, or chemically difficult. The change from green to grey is not abrupt everywhere. It can happen through patches, slopes, exposed rock, and mineral-stained ground. You can imagine walking in thought across that transition, noticing fewer leaves, more stone, more sulfur scent, and finally the blue lake appearing below. The ecosystem gives way to geology, then geology reveals chemistry. Yet even the most mineral parts remain part of the wider ecological setting. Rainfall, erosion, air movement, microbial life, and downstream mixing all connect the crater to living systems. The lake is unusual, but it is not outside Earth's web. It is one of the web's rarer knots, tied from volcanic heat, acid water, cloud forest, and mountain weather. You can hold that image gently, and as the green outer slopes fade again behind mist, the blue crater lake remains waiting inside the mountain, strange because it gathers so many worlds into one basin. It gathers the sky because rain fills it and cloud moves across it. It gathers the volcano because gases rise into it and heated fluids shape its chemistry. It gathers stone because the crater walls slowly dissolve, weather, and fall toward it. It gathers light because its mineral water changes the color of what enters from above. You can sit with that gathering and feel how the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake becomes a place where separate elements lose their edges and become one stillness. The basin's enclosed shape helps everything remain concentrated. A river would carry chemistry away quickly. A small spring might be vivid but brief. A shallow pool might dry or shift with weather. Ijen's lake is large enough and sheltered enough to hold a chemical identity over time. You can imagine the crater as a quiet hand cupped around water, allowing volcanic breath and rainfall to mingle slowly until the result becomes unmistakable. The blue lake is strange because the mountain gives it time. Time also lets the lake alter the very place that holds it. Acidic water, vapor, and rainfall work along the margins, changing minerals and weakening some surfaces while staining others. The crater is not an inert bowl. It participates in its own transformation. You can see this in the pale zones, yellow deposits, and rust-colored marks that ring the basin. The Ijen landscape feels ancient not because it is unchanged, but because its changes happen in a low and steady rhythm. When we picture ordinary lakes, we often imagine them as recipients of landscapes. Streams enter, sediments arrive, and the lake passively holds them. Ijen feels different because it is both recipient and maker. It receives volcanic gases, then becomes acidic enough to change incoming rock. It receives light, then returns an altered blue. It receives rain, then sends chemically distinct water outward. The lake is not only held by the crater, it helps define the crater's continuing story. This is one of the gentlest ways to understand geological strangeness. A strange place is often one where feedbacks are visible. Gas changes water, water changes rock, rock changes water, rain changes concentration, concentration changes color, color changes perception, perception brings us closer, and closer attention reveals the system more fully. You are not simply looking at Ijen, you are entering its chain of relations. And as those relations circle through the basin, the lake's blue surface remains quiet enough to carry them without seeming crowded. The color can make the lake appear cool and serene, even when its chemistry is intensely acidic. That contrast is central to its wonder. You expect the extraordinary to announce itself loudly, yet here it rests in a calm surface beneath mist. The Ijen Lake does not foam or glitter in our imagined stillness. It simply holds a blue-green opacity that feels almost meditative. The science beneath it deepens the calm because it reveals how much can happen without obvious motion. Acidic water is chemically active, but activity at molecular scales does not always look active to the eye. Reactions happen in solution. Ions move. Minerals dissolve, particles settle, gases enter and transform. From the rim, all of this may appear as stillness. You can let that mismatch be comforting. It reminds you that not every meaningful process has to be visible, and not every visible calm is empty. Ijen is quiet because its activity is distributed. Distributed activity is common in nature. Soil forms through countless small reactions. Forests breathe through leaves and roots. Coral reefs build through tiny living bodies. Glaciers move grain by grain and layer by layer. Ijen belongs to this broader pattern, though its materials are sulfur, acid, volcanic rock, and rain. The lake's strangeness lies in the ingredients, not in any break from nature's pace. It is rare, but not unnatural. You can think of the lake as a slow field of chemistry spread across depth and time. Near the surface, rain and light have their influence. Near the bottom, sediments and denser waters may hold other conditions. Along the edges, rock-water interactions continue. Near vents, heat and gas may shift the balance. Each part of the lake has its own quiet role, and together they make one blue volcanic world. The word world fits because Ijen's crater lake is not merely a feature within a scene. It has atmosphere, boundaries, layers, inputs, outputs, and rhythms. It has a surface weather, a hidden depth, a mineral shore, and a relation to everything around it. When you let your mind rest there long enough, the lake becomes spacious. You can wander inside one place without needing to leave it. And as we wander deeper inside this one place, the crater's walls begin to tell us how the lake learned to stay. The walls of Kawah Ijen rose through volcanic construction and later reshaping. Layers of lava, ash, and other deposits built the high ground, while erosion and collapse shaped the basin where water could collect. You do not need to see each event separately. Imagine instead the mountain forming in long breaths, adding material, opening space, weathering back, and holding a hollow where rain could remain. The lake exists because the land first made a cup. A crater cup is not always permanent. It can be breached, filled, drained, or altered by later activity. At Ijen, conditions allowed a lake to persist, and that persistence allowed chemistry to concentrate. The shape and the chemistry depend on each other. Without the crater, gases and fluids would disperse differently. Without ongoing volcanic input, the water would slowly lose much of its unusual character. The strangeness requires both form and process. The steep sides also influence how the lake feels. They enclose the eye and reduce the sense of open horizon. They make the basin intimate, even while it remains large. You can imagine looking down and feeling the world narrow to one blue surface, one ring of altered stone, one movement of mist. The crater walls do not trap the mind, they shelter it. They give attention a place to settle. In sleep, shelter matters. A wide plain may let thoughts scatter while a bowl gathers them. Ijen's crater gathers thought the way it gathers rain. The mind slides down the slopes and comes to rest at the lake. From there, it can drift across blue water, follow vapor upward, or sink into hidden depth. Every direction still belongs to the same quiet enclosure. The landscape becomes a natural lullaby of containment. Even the roughness of the walls has a soothing effect when described slowly. Loose rock, pale alteration, sulfur stains, small channels, and shadowed ledges create texture without confusion. The eye can move from detail to detail at an unforced pace. Nothing shines too brightly except the lake itself. Nothing asks to be named too quickly. The crater teaches the gaze to move like water. And as the gaze moves like water down the slopes, it reaches the shore again, where color thickens and reflection fades. The shoreline of Ijen is not a simple decorative edge. It is an active zone where acidic water, mineral surfaces, wetting, drying, and sediment meet. You can picture a pale band along parts of the margin, marked by changing lake levels and chemical contact. The ground may look bleached or stained, depending on the minerals present and the history of water there. Every mark belongs to some earlier meeting between lake and stone. Because the water is so acidic, the shore has a spare character. Familiar softness is replaced by mineral detail. There may be crusts, altered rock, damp streaks, and fine deposits. This spareness makes the blue water seem even more intense. It also gives the margin a contemplative feeling, as if the land has been simplified by chemistry to its essential forms: water, stone, vapor, color, and silence. At the edge, small ripples can move differently depending on wind and shape. The lake may lap lightly against mineral shore, though the sound is muted in the basin's hush. If rain has recently fallen, water might run down from the wall in thin paths, carrying fine sediment and dissolved material toward the lake. You can imagine those little threads entering the blue surface and disappearing without ceremony. The lake accepts them all. The edge is also where the mind can feel the lake's difference most clearly. It looks like water, and yet it is unlike water you would cup in your hands. It is beautiful to see, but its beauty belongs to distance and respect. That respectful distance is peaceful. We do not need to possess the place. We only need to witness it accurately. The lake remains whole because it is not reduced to use. This witnessing is a quiet form of care. You stand beside the Ijen Lake in imagination, aware of its chemistry, its volcanic origin, and its delicate relation to the wider watershed. You do not need to interfere. You allow the place to be what it is. Some landscapes become more restful when we stop asking them to resemble comfort and begin receiving the comfort of their own truth. And as the shoreline grows still in our attention, the hidden water below the surface begins to deepen again. Below the first layer of light, the Ijen Lake becomes less visual and more imagined through science. Dissolved minerals fill the water. Acidity shapes reactions. Temperature and density may vary with depth and input. The bottom is hidden under opaque water, yet it is part of the system's calm. You can picture the descent slowly, not as a dive, but as a tension sinking through blue-green silence. The surface softens above, and the mineral darkness grows quiet below. In deeper water, light weakens. Colors change. Suspended particles become small shadows in the water column. Fine material falls from above and continues its long journey towards sediment. The acidity remains not as a visible color alone, but as a surrounding condition. You can imagine every sinking particle meeting that condition on its way down. The lake is not passive space. It is an environment with a chemical touch. Hydrothermal influence may enter through unseen zones, adding heat or dissolved substances to parts of the lake. These inputs can help maintain unusual chemistry even as rain continues to fall. If denser fluids gather lower in the basin, the lake may hold a hidden stratification, a layered arrangement not obvious from above. You can think of the water as a quiet stack of histories, each layer shaped by what entered, when it entered, and how it mixed. Layering feels gentle because it allows difference without conflict. One layer can be cooler or warmer, fresher or more mineral rich, clearer or more dense. They may mix slowly, partially, or seasonally depending on conditions. The lake does not need to become uniform to be whole. Its wholeness includes gradients. Your own rest can include gradients too. Some thoughts near the surface, some deeper, some already settling. At the bottom, sediments keep the slow memory of the crater. Rainfall events, slope erosion, sulfur input, hydrothermal changes, and chemical precipitation may all leave traces. The lake floor receives without speaking. In that receiving, it resembles the deepest parts of sleep, where the day's fragments sink out of active thought and become something quieter. Ijen's hidden floor is not seen, but it gives the basin depth. And as that unseen floor holds the fallen particles, the surface far above continues to meet the sky with a color that seems almost impossible. The word impossible keeps returning, but each time it becomes softer. At first, the blue acid crater lake of Ijen looks impossible because its color seems too bright for a volcanic hollow. Then it seems impossible because such beauty and acidity coexist. Later, it seems impossible because blue flame and blue water share the same crater. Finally, after we linger, impossible becomes another word for rare, and rare becomes another word for specific. Specific places are calming because they do not need to be everywhere. Ijen is Ijen. Its conditions, shape, chemistry, climate, and volcanic setting are particular. The lake does not represent all lakes. It does not represent all volcanoes. It is one concentrated example of what can happen when water and volcanic gas meet inside the right basin. You can rest inside that specificity. Nothing has to become general tonight. The landscape's uniqueness is not lonely. It belongs to a family of volcanic lakes, acid springs, fumarole fields, and hydrothermal systems around the world. Yet Ijen keeps its own voice within that family. Its large acidic lake, vivid color, sulfur vents, and blue flames give it a character that feels unmistakable. You hear the name Kawah Ijen, and the mind returns to blue water in a crater, pale vapor, yellow sulfur, and cool mountain air. This anchored image helps guide the listener through the long night. Whenever attention drifts, the place name brings us back. Ijen, a volcanic crater in eastern Java, a blue acid lake resting high in a basin, sulfur breath rising from stone, mist crossing the rim, rain becoming chemistry. The repetition does not tire because the image deepens each time. The lake holds return. Return is part of sleep as well. Thoughts wander, and breath brings them back. Images fade, and a sound returns them. The body shifts, then settles again. In this way, the script follows the lake. We drift outward to rain, forest, and watershed, then return to the blue basin. We drift downward to sediments, then return to the surface. Each return is softer, and as we return once more, the air above the lake seems to thicken with mist, making the crater feel enclosed and inward. Mist is one of Ijen's gentlest companions. It can soften the mineral severity of the crater and make the lake seem to appear from nowhere. A clear view gives detail, but mist gives depth. It hides the far wall, blurs the shoreline, and turns steam into part of the larger air. You can imagine standing there while white vapor and cloud mingle, until the boundary between fumarole breath and mountain weather becomes uncertain. This uncertainty suits the place. Ijen is always crossing boundaries: water and fire, acidity and beauty, forest and mineral basin, sky, rain, and volcanic gas. Mist makes those crossings visible by softening lines. The crater becomes less like a diagram and more like a dream. yet the science remains underneath, steady and real. The dream is not false. It is simply the atmosphere through which truth arrives. Moisture in the air also changes scent. It carries sulfur differently than dry air would, holding mineral notes close to the ground and letting them drift in slow patches. You might breathe in and notice the crater strongly, then breathe again and find the scent softer. Wind shifts, vapor thins, cloud moves. The smell does not remain fixed. It behaves like the lake's color, varying gently with conditions. The skin feels mist before the mind measures it. Cool droplets gather on hair, eyelashes, clothing, and stone. The air becomes tangible. In a crater shaped by chemistry, even moisture feels meaningful. It is not only weather. It is the same water cycle that feeds the lake, alters the slopes, and carries dissolved material outward. The mist on your skin belongs to the same cycle as the blue basin below. That thought can be very calming. The boundary between you and the landscape becomes softer in imagination, not because you disappear, but because the same air and water connect everything. You breathe crater air. Mist touches your face. The lake receives cloud. Steam becomes atmosphere. Rain returns. The place is not separate from itself in pieces. It is one slow exchange. And as the mist holds the crater close, the sulfur vents glow in memory, small blue flames folded into darkness. The blue flames are often what first draws curiosity to Ijen, but in the quieter rhythm of this journey, they become one detail among many. They appear only under the right conditions, when darkness allows their color to be seen and sulfur-rich gases ignite near vents. They do not explain the lake by themselves. They belong to the same volcanic system, another visible sign of sulfur moving from depth to surface, a small flicker beside a vast blue basin. There is something almost poetic in the way Ijen's blue appears in two forms. In water, the blue is broad, cool-looking, and still. In flame, the blue is narrow, warm, and moving. One lies low in the basin. One escapes from cracks. One persists through daylight as color. One becomes most visible at night. They are different expressions of the same mountain chemistry, like two notes played by one hidden instrument. The flame's blue color comes from combustion involving sulfur compounds, not from magic or from the lake burning. This distinction makes the wonder stronger, not weaker. The facts prevent confusion while preserving beauty. You can picture the flame more accurately now. Gas emerging, oxygen meeting it, blue light appearing briefly along the ground. Around it, yellow sulfur deposits form where vapors cool. Beyond it, the acid lake rests in darkness. Because the flame is small compared with the crater, it also helps reveal scale. A blue glow near the vent may catch the eye, but the surrounding darkness remains immense. The lake spreads below, the walls rise above. The sky opens overhead. A small, luminous process makes the larger stillness easier to feel. You notice the flame, then notice the quiet around it, and the quiet becomes larger. In sleep, small lights can anchor vast darkness. A lamp in a distant window, moonlight under a door, a star between clouds. At Ijen, the blue flame serves that role in the imagination. It is not a signal of urgency. It is a low mineral light, reminding us that the mountain's hidden heat continues, while the rest of the crater rests in shadow. And as the blue flame fades with the idea of dawn, the lake's blue rises again as the main color of the basin. Morning returns slowly to Kawah Ijen. The crater rim appears first, then upper slopes, then the pale altered walls, and finally the lake brightens under the changing sky. You can imagine the blue-green surface emerging from gray shadow, calm and opaque. Steam becomes white rather than invisible. Yellow sulfur becomes warm in the first light. The scene does not begin suddenly. It gathers itself from dimness. This gradual gathering mirrors the way understanding gathers. At first, Ijen is only strange. Then it is volcanic. Then it is acidic. Then it is hydrothermal, mineral-rich, rain-fed, enclosed, layered, and connected to a wider landscape. Each new understanding arrives like morning light touching another part of the crater. The whole scene becomes clearer without losing its dreamlike quality. Clarity and mystery can share the same basin. The lake's surface in morning may show subtle tonal differences depending on wind, light, suspended matter, and depth. Some areas may appear milky turquoise, others may lean green or deeper blue. The color is not a flat sheet. It has movement within stillness, variation within unity. You can let your gaze travel slowly across those changes with no need to decide which shade is the true one. All of them belong to Ijen. The crater walls, reflected faintly in the water, may become distorted or swallowed by opacity. Unlike a clear alpine lake, Ijen may not return a crisp image of the surrounding slopes. It keeps its own identity. This is part of its quiet power. It receives the world and changes it before giving anything back. The lake is not a mirror. It is a mineral presence. That presence can feel almost companionable in the sleep script, because it does not speak, judge, or hurry. It remains. The listener can drift away and return to find the same blue surface waiting. The science may move in and out of awareness, but the image stays. A crater lake, acidic and luminous, held in a volcanic bowl beneath mist, and as that image steadies, the broader water cycle carries our attention upward again, from lake surface to cloud. Water vapor rises from seas, forests, soils, and lakes, becomes cloud, and falls again as rain. At Ijen, this ordinary planetary cycle enters an extraordinary volcanic setting. Rainfall does not remain neutral for long once it joins the crater. It meets acidic gases, altered rock, and mineral-rich waters. The familiar becomes transformed. You can imagine a clear raindrop falling through mist and becoming part of the blue lake's unusual body. Some rain falls directly onto the water, some lands on the crater wall and moves downward. Some enters cracks, perhaps traveling through warmer ground before returning elsewhere. Some nourishes vegetation outside the harshest zones. The same storm may feed green leaves and acid water, cool stone and steaming vents. This is one of Ijen's quiet contrasts. Weather is shared, but conditions shape its destination differently. Clouds around the mountain make this cycle visible. They arrive as soft masses over the rim, dissolve into mist, and sometimes release fine rain that turns rock darker. Afterward, vapor rises from warmed surfaces, and the air seems full of returning moisture. The crater breathes water in several forms at once: liquid in the lake, vapor from vents, mist in the air, droplets on stone. Each form is temporary, and each form belongs. Temporary forms are restful because they do not need to be held. Mist will pass, rain will fall, steam will vanish. The lake level may change, the blue will shift with light. Nothing in the scene is rigid, yet the place remains recognizable. This is the kind of stability nature often offers. Not stillness without change, but identity through repeated motion. You can feel that in your breath again. Each breath is different, yet breathing continues. Each thought changes, yet awareness remains. Each cloud over Ijen has its own shape, yet the crater remains the crater. The lake's strangeness does not depend on one frozen moment. It is renewed through cycles, and cycles are deeply suited to sleep. And as cycles turn slowly through rain, vapor, and lake water, the mineral world below continues its patient transformations. Minerals in volcanic landscapes are never entirely finished. Under heat, pressure, acidity, and weather, they can change into new forms. At Ijen, acidic fluids may alter primary volcanic minerals into clays, sulfates, and iron-bearing stains. Some areas become pale and softened. Others take on yellow, red, or orange colors. The crater wall becomes a record of transformation. But the record is not written in words. It is written in texture. Texture matters in a place like this. Rough lava fragments, crumbly ash, damp mineral crust, smooth, wet streaks, and powdery sulfur all catch light differently. You can imagine touching none of it, only seeing and sensing the variety. The eye feels texture almost physically. It knows the difference between a wet stone and a dry one, between crystalline sulfur and soft altered clay. The crater becomes tangible through sight. Acid alteration can also influence slope stability and erosion. Rocks changed by fluids may weather differently from unaltered volcanic material. Rain may carve small channels where softer material yields. Particles may slide, settle, and eventually reach the lake. This is not presented as drama, it is simply how a mineral landscape continues to reshape itself under weather and chemistry. Ijen's walls are slowly giving themselves to the basin. The lake receives these offerings in fine increments. A grain here, a dissolved ion there, a wash of sediment after rain, a chemical precipitate forming when conditions shift. Over time, these increments matter. Nature often works by small contributions repeated beyond ordinary patience. You can let that idea deepen the calm. Small things, repeated gently, become landscapes. In the quiet of this script, even dissolution can feel soft. A mineral does not shout as it enters water. A particle does not hurry as it falls. A stain does not appear all at once. The crater changes by accumulation, and accumulation is a sleepful form of time. It allows the listener to let go of sharp beginnings and endings. And as sharp endings fade, the lake's story opens sideways into the surrounding night, where mountain air and darkness soften every outline. Night at Ijen changes how the crater is understood. Without strong daylight, color withdraws from the walls, and the lake's blue becomes darker, almost inward. Steam may be visible only where it catches faint light. The rim becomes a shadowed boundary against the sky. You can imagine the whole basin breathing in low tones, with only occasional hints of sulfur yellow or blue flame to guide the eye through darkness. Darkness is not emptiness in this place. It holds heat, water, gas, mineral surfaces, slopes, and unseen depth. It holds the same lake that daylight reveals, only more quietly. The listener can rest in that darkness because it is stable and natural. Nothing needs to emerge suddenly. The crater's features remain where they were, simply softened by the absence of strong light. At night, the senses may shift towards smell, temperature, and sound. The sulfur scent becomes more noticeable when vision fades. The cool air along the rim may feel clearer. Steam hissing at vents becomes easier to hear. Footsteps in the mind slow naturally, because darkness asks for care. We are not adventuring here. We are simply present, letting the night reduce the world to a few soft signals. The blue flame, if present, can seem almost liquid in darkness. It may appear to move along cracks where gas emerges, low and quiet, not like a campfire, but like chemistry briefly made visible. The lake nearby becomes a darker blue absence, broad and patient. The two forms of blue meet only in the mind, one flickering, one resting, both belonging to the same volcanic breath. This night version of Ijen brings us closer to the deep water feeling of the channel's voice. Even though we are high on land, the crater becomes an oceanic chamber of darkness, and the lake becomes a still inland depth. You are not descending through seawater, yet attention sinks in the same way. The pressure is not physical here. It is the gentle enclosing pressure of shadow, mineral air, and silence. And as silence gathers at night, the blue acid lake becomes a calm center around which every other detail can slowly orbit. Orbit is a gentle word for attention. We circle the lake by thinking of its chemistry, its color, its heat, its rain, its sediments, its vents, and its surrounding slopes. Each orbit returns us to the same center with a little more understanding. The lake remains unchanged in the moment, but our perception becomes layered. Ijen rewards circling because it cannot be exhausted by one pass of the eye. In one orbit, we notice sulfur. In another, acidity. In another, crater form. In another, the absence of familiar freshwater life. In another, the hidden microbial possibilities at margins and mineral surfaces. None of these details stands alone. They all curve back to the lake. You can feel them moving around the blue basin like slow moons, each one reflecting a little light. This circling also keeps the script from needing a forward rush. We are not climbing toward an event, we are sinking into place. The same lake can be approached from many directions, and each direction is calm. A scientific explanation becomes a path, a sensory detail becomes another path, a reflection becomes another. They all arrive at Ijen and then drift onward without leaving. The listener who wakes slightly in the night can re-enter anywhere. If you hear sulfur, you are at Ijen. If you hear blue acidic water, you are at Ijen. If you hear volcanic mist, crater walls, rain, and hidden heat, you are still at Ijen. The topic stays near, like the lake itself beneath the rim. The mind does not have to search. There is kindness in that repetition. Sleep does not need novelty at every turn. It needs a stable world rich enough to hold wandering attention. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake provides that world, strange, beautiful, chemically active, and deeply still in the imagination. We can keep circling it, softer each time. And as our circling slows, the lake's outflow begins to draw one more quiet line from the crater toward the valleys below. Where acidic water leaves the crater system, it carries a signature of its origin. The flow may be altered by mixing with rainfall, groundwater, and other streams, but the memory of Ijen remains in its chemistry. Downstream, the water's color, mineral deposits, or acidity may reveal something of the lake's influence. You can picture a narrow flow moving through rock, less vivid than the lake, but still connected to it by invisible threads. The name, often associated with acidic drainage below Ijen, refers to bitter water, a reminder that people have long recognized the unusual quality of these streams. We keep the focus on the natural process itself, lake water leaving a volcanic basin and becoming part of a watershed. As it travels, it meets new stones, new slopes, and new waters. Each meeting changes it. The crater's concentrated chemistry becomes gradually translated into the language of the valley. This translation may include precipitation of minerals as acidity changes. Iron-rich compounds can color stream beds in warm tones. Other dissolved substances may continue moving. Neutralization may occur where waters meet rocks or tributaries with different chemistry. The stream becomes a moving chemical gradient. You can imagine it not as a sharp line, but as a slow fading from crater intensity toward broader watershed balance. The valley receives this water as part of the mountain's total presence. A volcano is not only its summit, crater, or lake, it includes the drainage patterns, soils, springs, forests, altered rocks, and streams shaped by its materials. Ijen's Blue Lake is the luminous center, but the mountain's influence moves outward in subdued ways. This broader view makes the lake feel connected rather than isolated. Connection can be restful when it is not crowded. One thing leads to another. Lake to stream, stream to valley, rain to lake, gas to acid, rock to mineral, mineral to color. The mind can follow these relations like a slow river. There is no final point required, only movement through a coherent landscape. And as the valley line softens in the distance, we drift back upward through mist to the crater rim, where the lake waits below like a quiet blue eye. From the rim, the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake may appear both near and unreachable. It is visible, but its chemistry asks for respect. It is beautiful, but not inviting in the ordinary recreational sense. This distance gives the scene a contemplative quality. You do not need to enter the water to be moved by it. You can remain above, feeling cool air, watching vapor, and allowing the lake to be itself. Distance becomes part of the piece. Many natural wonders are best met through careful distance. A glacier's crevasses, a geyser's heat, a fragile coral reef, a desert salt crust, and an acid crater lake all ask us to witness without taking possession. This does not lessen intimacy. It changes the form of intimacy. You become close through attention rather than touch. You learn the lake by seeing how it belongs to its place. The rim offers perspective. From there, you can see the relationship between water, wall, vents, sulfur deposits, and sky. The system becomes legible as a whole. Down near the lake, details might overwhelm. From above, they arrange themselves. You understand why the crater shape matters, why vapor rises where it does, why the lake color feels so startling against muted stone. The whole basin becomes a single quiet diagram drawn by Earth. Yet the rim also keeps mystery intact. You cannot see the bottom. You cannot see the hidden pathways of gas and fluid. You cannot watch every reaction inside the water. The lake remains partly concealed, even in full view. This partial knowledge is gentle. It allows wonder to stay awake while the body grows sleepy. We know enough to trust the place, and not so much that it becomes ordinary. The breeze at the rim carries the basin upward. It may bring mineral scent, cool moisture, and the faint warmth of volcanic vapor thinned by distance. You breathe it slowly. The crater is below. but its atmosphere reaches you. The lake is still, but its presence rises. You remain at the edge, and the edge feels safe in the sense of being calm, respectful, and unhurried. And as we linger at that edge, the title's quiet question continues to answer itself without ever needing to become sharp. Why is the Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake so strange? Because it is water shaped by a volcano at nearly every level. Because its beauty comes from acidity rather than from ordinary freshness. Because its color is produced by a whole collaboration of minerals, light, depth, and atmosphere. Because sulfur gas can make blue flame nearby, echoing the lake's color in a completely different form. Because green highlands and mineral barrenness meet around one crater. It is strange because the familiar word lake does not fully prepare you for it. A lake suggests calm water, and Ijen is calm. A lake suggests reflection, and Ijen partly resists reflection. A lake suggests life at the edges, and Ijen's edges are more mineral than lush. A lake suggests rainwater gathered in a hollow, and Ijen is also that, but transformed by volcanic breath. The familiar word opens the door, and the place becomes other. Yet the otherness is not distant from Earth. It is Earth expressed under rare conditions. Every component is natural: rain, gas, sulfur, iron, heat, stone, acidity, light, mist. The strangeness comes from their arrangement. This is an important softness. Ijen is not unnatural. It is nature being specific, concentrated, and patient. You can feel wonder without feeling separation. The lake belongs here completely. The blue acid lake also feels strange because it reveals hidden processes through beauty. We might not normally think about volcanic gases dissolving into rainwater, or minerals entering solution, or crater basins concentrating chemistry. At Ijen, those processes make a visible landscape. The lake becomes an invitation to notice what is usually invisible. It turns deep geology into color, and color into attention. Attention, when slow enough, becomes rest. We notice the lake and do not rush away. We notice the sulfur and let it remain yellow. We notice the mist and let it pass. We notice acidity and let the science sit gently beside the image. The question why becomes not a demand, but a current moving through the script. It carries us around the basin again. And as that current moves through the basin, the deepest quiet of Ijen waits not in a final answer, but in the continuing presence of the lake itself. The lake does not become less strange after explanation. It becomes more companionable. You know why the water is acidic, yet the color still feels unreal. You know why sulfur may burn blue, yet the image still feels like a dream. You know why the crater holds water, yet the basin still feels like a secret. Understanding does not drain the wonder. It lets the wonder become steady. Steady wonder is ideal for sleep. It gives the mind something beautiful to rest on without waking it into surprise. The Ijen crater lake remains unusual, but its unusualness is now familiar in the slowest way. You have heard its elements repeated and softened: blue water, acid chemistry, sulfur vents, mist, crater walls, rain, hidden heat, mineral shore. Each return lowers the energy. Each return deepens the place. You can imagine lying still while the scene continues without needing you. Mist crosses the rim, steam rises from vents, the lake holds its opaque blue. Rain may fall far away over the highlands, moving toward some later arrival in the basin. Sulfur gathers where gases cool, sediment rests below, the mountain continues its patient work in the dark, and your breathing can become equally patient. There is no rush to leave the crater. In this kind of narration, staying is the journey. We stay until details soften into atmosphere. We stay until explanation becomes rhythm. We stay until the word Ijen carries not only a place, but a feeling. Cool air, mineral scent, blue stillness, and a volcanic bowl held under cloud. The feeling is quiet enough to sleep inside, and as we stay, the lake's surface darkens again in our imagination, as if evening has returned and the basin is moving back towards shadow. Evening gathers slowly over Kawah Ijen. The upper ridges dim first, then the walls lose their mineral detail, and the lake turns from turquoise toward deeper blue. Steam remains pale for a little while longer. Yellow sulfur loses its brightness and becomes a remembered warmth. The air cools against your face. The crater seems to draw inward, holding its scents and sounds closer as light thins into dusk. At dusk, the lake's chemistry no longer needs to be visible to be present. You know it is there beneath the darkening surface. The acidity remains. The dissolved minerals remain. The hidden sediments remain. The hydrothermal pathways continue below. Daylight was only one way of seeing the system. Night is another way, quieter and more trusting. The lake does not stop being itself when color fades. The first hints of blue flame may become visible in the darker vent areas, if conditions allow. They are small and low, appearing where sulfur-rich gases meet air and combustion creates a cool-looking light. The flames do not dominate the crater. They mark it softly. The lake below, broad and dark, keeps most of the silence. Blue appears in flicker and depth, in flame and water, in the eye and in memory. You can feel how the scene has slowed since morning. No new fact needs to arrive quickly. The lake has been explained by many pathways, and now those pathways settle into atmosphere. Volcanic gas is a breath. Acidic water is a blue stillness. Sulfur is a yellow memory. Rain is a future arrival. Sediment is sleep at the bottom of the basin. Everything becomes simpler without becoming empty. The crater at dusk may be the most restful version of Ijen. It holds enough light to remember color and enough darkness to release detail. You can let the image blur slightly, as if mist has moved between you and the far wall. The blue acid lake remains centered, but its edges grow soft. Your own thoughts can do the same. And as the edges grow soft, we descend again through the idea of the lake, from color into depth, from depth into mineral darkness. In that imagined descent, the surface closes above like a quiet veil. The blue-green light fades into dimness. Suspended particles drift around us in thought, each one moving downward at its own pace. The water is not the water of a clear spring or a moonlit sea. It is Ijen's water, dense with dissolved history, shaped by gas, acidity, and stone. We drift only in imagination, respectfully, without touching the real lake. The deeper we imagine, the less visual the world becomes. Chemistry replaces scenery. Temperature, density, acidity, and mineral content become the hidden architecture. The lake's inner space is built from gradients rather than walls. You can move through it slowly in the mind, sensing layers without needing sharp boundaries. Above, rain and light belong to the surface. Below, sediment and darker water hold the crater's quieter memory. At the bottom, fine materials rest after their descent from wall, vapor, and water column. Some grains began as volcanic rock loosened by weather. Some materials formed through chemical reactions. Some arrived after rain washed the slope. The lake floor receives them all in darkness. It is a small abyss inside a mountain, not oceanic in scale, but similar in feeling. Still, soft, accumulated, and patient. This hidden bottom is where the pace becomes slowest. Surface weather changes hour by hour. Mist passes in minutes. Flames flicker at night. Rain comes and goes, but sediment keeps a longer measure. It forms by receiving what falls, and it does not need to hurry. The idea of that bottom can draw the listener downward into sleep, because it is all acceptance. Everything that drifts down is held. The Ijen Blue Acid Crater Lake is strange even here in the invisible bottom, because its sediments form under uncommon chemical conditions. They are touched by acidity, metals, sulfate, and hydrothermal influence. The lake floor is not ordinary mud beneath ordinary water. It is part of the volcanic system's record, a quiet archive written under blue acid depth. And as we rest near that hidden archive, the mountain above continues breathing, sending faint signals through water, vapor, and stone.